Chapter 528. Upon hearing this voice, Lin Yuan was immediately startled. Lin Yuan had already found the source of this voice. It came from the depths of his soul. Lin Yuan subconsciously thought into the depths of his soul, and found that the depths of his soul, which he had previously been unable to reach, were now unobstructed. Upon entering the depths of his soul, Lin Yuan immediately discovered that one of his two human-shaped phantoms had a girl with her eyes closed, a crown on her head, and a sharp sword in her arms. Lin Yuan used true data to examine the girl floating in midair in the soul phantom. Upon seeing the information displayed under true data, Lin Yuan suddenly did not know what to say. Could sacred source lifeforms be fused? Under Morbius true data, the girl with closed eyes, wearing a crown, and holding a sharp sword was not a sacred source lifeform. Instead, it was the state of two sacred source lifeforms fused together. These two sacred source lifeforms were currently fusing from 2 to 1. This immediately made Lin Yuan recall the scene in his dream, where the girl with her eyes closed seemed to be threatened by the reddish gold light, and reluctantly embraced the sharp sword. Under true data, the name of the girl with her eyes closed was the sacred source lifeform, Grace Queen. The name of the sword engraved with gorgeous patterns on the hilt was the sacred source lifeform, Sacred Punishment Sword. Under true data, the fusion rate of these two sacred source lifeforms had reached 70%. There was still 30% left before they could completely fuse and become a new sacred source lifeform. Based on the time he had been unconscious, Lin Yuan made a rough calculation. This meant that he would know in about 3 days, when these two sacred source lifeforms fused, the Grace Queen and the Sacred Punishment Sword, what kind of sacred source lifeform would be formed? When the Grace Queen fused with the sacred source lifeform, the Execution Sword, it was equivalent to sealing their own abilities and fusing them together. Since the two had already fused to about 70%, Lin Yuan could not use true data to find out the specific functions of the Grace Queen and the Sacred Punishment Sword. However, based on the name alone, the Grace Queen should be a sacred source lifeform with supportive abilities. The Executioner Sword was a sacred source lifeform with offensive abilities. Lin Yuan was not worried at all about what the Grace Princess and the Pursuit Holy Sword would fuse into. He only had a strong anticipation. His master, the Moon Empress, and the Mother of Bloodbath had both said that every sacred source lifeform had an irreplaceable function. As a result, there were no weak sacred source lifeforms. In his opinion, even if he did not know why the two sacred source lifeforms would fuse in his soul, he should be able to understand why. However, a sacred source lifeform formed from the fusion of two sacred source lifeforms should be much stronger than the original sacred source lifeform. Otherwise, wouldn't he have fused with it for nothing? In the depths of Lin Yuan's soul, he could hear the crown on her head, and her eyes closed as she hugged the sacred sword. Even in her deep sleep, she still kept calling out to him, "My lord, my lord." Lin Yuan could feel a throbbing in his bloodline. The throbbing of his bloodline caused him to be tightly connected to this girl who had her eyes tightly shut, wore a crown on her head, and held a sacred sword in her arms. When Lin Yuan had held the two sacred source lifeforms to prevent the dimensional rift from evolving, they had absorbed a lot of his blood. It even absorbed some of Lin Yuan's bone marrow from his shattered bones. If not for the fact that this girl with the crown on her head was an illusory spiritual body, Lin Yuan would not have been able to recognize her. Just this feeling of blood connection made Lin Yuan feel as though he had raised a daughter. Lin Yuan did not think too much about it. He only needed to wait for 3 days. He would then be able to clearly understand the functions of the fused sacred source lifeform with true data. When Lin Yuan came back to his senses, he realized that Genius had already turned into a cat pancake in Chu Si's arms. Its 3 little tails were wagging non-stop with a satisfied expression. In fact, when Lin Yuan had hung up the phone, he had noticed that Chu Si was looking at him with a hopeful expression. At the same time, there was a hint of shyness. Lin Yuan immediately knew what Chu Si was thinking. Chu Si hugged Genius with both hands, and Lin Yuan reached out to stroke her hair. After pressing down the ahog on top of Chu Si's head, he said, "Buy whatever you want for the new year. Buy whatever you want during the New Year's shopping." This New Year's blackback mountain pork and bighead fish soup will be enough. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Chu Xi burst out laughing. Although Chu Xi did not know how many resources Lin Yuan had, just the pocket money that Lin Yuan would send to her star web card every once in a while was enough. It was enough to buy several blackback mountain pork and fathead fish farms. In addition, Chu Xi had been eating the nutritious set meals that Lin Yuan had ordered from the Spirit Food Pavilion. Basically, she could eat ingredients that were more than 10 times better than the blackback mountain pork and fathead fish soup. However, when Lin Yuan mentioned the blackback mountain pork and fathead fish soup, Chu Xi could not help but feel a strong sense of warmth in her heart. No matter what happened in the future, the taste of the blackback mountain pork and fathead fish soup had long been engraved in Chu Xi's mind. In Chu Xi's 16 years of life, the taste of the blackback mountain pork and fathead fish soup was equivalent to the taste of spending the new year with Lin Yuan. Big brother, don't be reluctant to eat the fish head and the fathead fish soup this new year. Upon hearing Chu Xi's words, Lin Yuan reached out and rubbed his nose. Chu Xi had really misunderstood this matter. Every new year, Lin Yuan would indeed leave the blackback mountain pork's lean meat for Chu Xi. He would eat some of the meat skin that Chu Xi did not like, or a few spoonfuls of vegetable soup. However, Lin Yuan did not eat the fish head and the fathead fish soup, not only because Chu Xi liked it. It was also because Lin Yuan did not like to eat things with a strong fishy smell at all. In this aspect, genius was in line with Lin Yuan's taste. After Chu Xi finished speaking, the hopeful expression on her face disappeared. For Chu Xi, every new year was the time when she and Lin Yuan would hold a few $100 Federation to buy New Year's goods. It could be considered the thing that Chu Xi had looked forward to the most when she was young. Now that Chu Xi had grown up, her longing was no longer the joy of eating good things when she bought New Year's goods. It was more because she could still do some things with Lin Yuan like when they were young. When the hope on Chu Xi's face disappeared, the shyness and uneasiness on Chu Xi's face became more intense. Lin Yuan looked at Chu Xi's expression and smiled brightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. The first time. End of this chapter. Chapter 529. Don't you already know Lu Jie and Wenyu? You've seen them before when we were video chatting. They're all looking forward to your arrival. Wenyu had already started to decorate your room when the house was being built. Uncle Hu knows that you like blackback mountain boars, so he made some wood carvings of blackback mountain boars for you. Upon hearing his words, Chu Xi felt that she should not defend herself at this time. She could not remember how many times she had told Lin Yuan that she only liked to eat blackback mountain boar meat, not blackback mountain boars. However, after thinking about it, every time Lin Yuan explained, Lin Yuan would seem to be afraid that she would think too much and would hint to her that she could choose any face she liked. She didn't have to pay too much attention to this feeling, so she decided to give up on the treatment. Upon hearing that, the shy expression on Chu Xi's face disappeared. After Chu Xi grew up a little, she also helped Lin Yuan greet the customers who came to the face store. Although she wasn't good with words, she didn't think that she was a bashful person. It was just that a 16-year-old girl like Chu Xi was still a little nervous about getting to know so many of her brother's friends. After all, even if Chu Xi was acquainted with everyone in the manor, she had only gotten to know them through video chat. She had never met them in real life. Chu Xi suddenly recalled Cold Yu's suggestion to her before she became her master, so she told Lin Yuan, "Don't worry. Big brother, Master said that if I can obtain the Redbud 100 qualifications this year, then I can represent the Redbud 100 to participate in the Radiance 100 sequences selection next year. I will also have the chance to fight for the 10 Radiance 100 spots. If I can fight for the Radiance 100 spots, Master suggests that I skip grades and enter the Royal Capital's Advanced Spirit Chi University." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan did not help Chu Xi come up with an idea like before. Instead, he smiled and said to Chu Xi, "Little girl, you've already grown up. You can make your own decisions about these things." Perhaps Chu Xi was not necessarily the one who understood Lin Yuan the most in this world. However, Lin Yuan was the one who understood her the most in this world. Although Chu Xi was usually quiet, she was also a person with her own ideas. The fact that she had mentioned this to him meant that she had already made up her mind to skip grades and study in the royal capital's Advanced Spirit Qi University. Lin Yuan had gritted his teeth and chosen to let Chu Xi continue to attend school under such difficult conditions. It was because he wanted her to have a complete childhood and learn the knowledge she needed to learn like a child with parents. However, she had chosen to walk the path of a genius through her talent and hard work. When Chu Xi's school reopened after the holiday, she would have 2 fantasy breed fays and a fairy source-type life form, the burning sunflower. It was likely that none of the seniors who had participated in the mock competition with Chu Xi would be a match for her now. Under such circumstances, for someone like Chu Xi, who was adept at discovering problems in actual combat and making progress, it would be difficult for her to do so. It was equivalent to losing many opportunities to hone oneself. Thus, from the perspective of Chu Xi's growth, attending a high-level Spirit Qi University in the royal capital was the best choice. At that time, Chu Xi could commute every day and return to the manor directly after school. The brother and sister could live together every day. Chu Xi replied with a smile. Then I'll do as master says and strive to skip a grade next year to study at the Royal Capital Advanced Spirit Qi University. Lin Yuan pinched Chu Xi's nose and thought to himself, she's quite ambitious. However, when he thought of Chu Xi's obsidian iron wild bull, which had been upgraded to Fantasy 2 at silver, he realized that Chu Xi already had a master. Furthermore, her master was an expert like Cold Moon. He suddenly felt that she might really be able to enter the Radiance 100 sequence tomorrow. Lin Yuan had been awake for a while, so he lifted the blanket and got out of bed. Chu Xi, let's go out. Master and the others must be worried sick. Lin Yuan's expression turned slightly cold. At that moment, the gray-haired, gray-eyed man who called himself Hunting Ashes appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. After the gray-haired, gray-eyed man injured Lu Jia and thought that they were dead for sure, he said the name 7th Page War. It could be said that these 2 pieces of information were all the information Lin Yuan could grasp about the enemy in this evolving dimensional rift. Now that he was in the Radiant Moon Palace, he could tell the Moon Empress about it. It was also good to see if his master, the Moon Empress, could find out who exactly the other party was or what faction they were from. At this moment Lu Jia was confused. He might be the Radiance 100 sequence number 30, but no matter what, he did not deserve to be personally received by the chief guard of the Spirit Guards. Furthermore, the chief guard of the Spirit Guards had personally informed the Radiance Sacred Hall about this matter. Then, the Radiance Sacred Hall had relayed the message to him. It could be said to be very formal. However, the more formal it was, the more Lu Jia found it unusual. Lu Jia had his own guesses. He felt that he would be summoned by the chief guard of the Spirit Guards. It was very likely related to the dimensional rift that had appeared in the coastal sea outside Indigo Azure City. Although this was a serious matter, the guard envoys of the Spirit Guards were more than capable of receiving him personally. In fact, other than the guard envoys, there were also the left and right attendants of the Spirit Guards who could handle this matter. There was no need for the chief guard at all. While Lu Jia was still trying to figure out what was going on, he arrived at the lakeside of the Spirit Suppression Lake, where the Spirit Guards resided. As long as Lu Jia walked to the center of the Spirit Suppression Lake from the chain bridge, he would arrive at the Spirit Guards' territory. He had just arrived at the lakeside of the Spirit Sealing Lake, and was about to step onto the chain bridge that led to the Spirit Suppressing Division's territory. Lu Jia saw a black-robed woman with a veil over her face, standing at the center of the chain bridge. The woman stood on the chain bridge with her hands behind her back. There was not the slightest bit of spiritual energy fluctuation, just like an ordinary person. No matter how the east wind blew the rope bridge, the woman's figure was as still as a bronze beast on the side of the rope bridge. As a Radiance 100 sequence member, Lu Jia had met the chief guard of the Spirit Guards before. Based on the attire of the woman on the chain bridge, and the fact that she had appeared on a chain bridge within the Spirit Guards' territory, it was easy to tell that she was dressed like this. Lu Jia immediately confirmed the woman's identity. Second Gung, asking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Button will work on weekends, no breaks. Sob, sob, sob. But try to chase unparalleled in the world and Twilight Melody out. Sorry, I owe you a few days. Sob, sob, sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 530. At that moment, a thought suddenly occurred to Lu Jie. Could the chief guard be waiting for me here? However, he quickly tossed the thought to the back of his mind. The chief guard of the spirit guards had a lot of things to deal with during the active phase of the dimensional rift. How could she have so much time to wait for him here? Lu Jie looked at the black-robed chief guard, whose face was covered with a black veil on the chain bridge. The chief guard of the spirit guards seemed to sense Lu Jie's gaze. She turned her head and looked in Lu Jie's direction. Even though they were very far apart, the moment she turned around, Lu Jie saw a pair of pitch-black eyes. Lu Jie immediately saw a pair of eyes that were as dark as the night. Being stared at by these pitch-black eyes, Lu Jie suddenly felt a trace of indescribable pressure. It was like a fish out of water in the final long night without stars, about to be sealed by the long night, and sink into oblivion forever. Lu Jie had already stepped onto the chain bridge, and was walking toward the other side. The chief guard of the spirit guards kept staring at him, which made Lu Jie feel strange. However, Lu Jie had no choice but to bite the bullet and walk forward one step at a time. The more he walked, the more Lu Jie muttered in his heart. There was no one else on the chain bridge except for him. Moreover, the chief guard of the spirit guards kept looking in his direction, and did not move. It really seemed like the chief guard of the spirit guards had been waiting for him here. Lu Jie hurriedly walked 2 steps to the side of the chief guard of the spirit guards. After thinking for a long time, Lu Jie did not know what to say. In the end, Lu Jie could only say respectfully, "Greetings, chief guard." "Greetings, chief guard, what a coincidence." When Night-Leaning Moon heard Lu Jie speak, she turned around and made space beside her. She motioned for Lu Jie to step forward and walk beside her. Following that, Lu Jie heard an unusually calm voice that was as melodious as the hooves of a yellow oriole. Upon hearing this voice, Lu Jie did not know why, but he suddenly thought of Chimy's cry. Because of Bai Hao, Lu Jie had also heard the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess sing a few times in the Star Web's attractive section. In the past, Lu Jie had only marveled at the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's beautiful voice, which could actually be compared to Chimy's. Now Lu Jie suddenly had a thought. Could the chief guard of the attractive section be the spirit guard's chief guard? As soon as he had this thought, he threw it to the back of his mind. How could he have come up with such an absurd idea? Could it be that his brain was damaged due to the effects of the mental toxin in the dimensional rift? However, Lu Jie's expression immediately changed when he heard the chief guard's words. He was both surprised and somewhat solemn. "Unfortunately, I was originally waiting for you here. Your insect queen has not awoken from its mutated state. However, looking at the days, the insect queen should have absorbed most of the poison in the blade queen bee's life poison core. Jie's treatment in silver demon Jie's body. Lu guard Lin of Jie's Ling Ling Jie's Lu. However, Lin Yuan's healing and the silver stamen gold luster cash's baptism were only effective on the body. If Lin Yuan had not given Lu Jie a lot of cinnabar sweet osmanthus flower paste, Lu Jie might have woken up a few days later than Lin Yuan. Even so, Lu Jie still slept for 5 days, and woke up only 2 days earlier than Lin Yuan. When Lu Jie woke up, he found himself lying in his room in the manor. According to Wen Yu, it was the man called Uncle Mystic who had brought her back. Not only did the chief guard of the spirit guards know about his insect queen's situation, but she also knew about it in such detail. This meant that the chief guard should have been present when he was spat out by the dimensional rift, while unconscious, and had personally checked on the insect queen's situation. However, when he heard the chief guard of the spirit guards mention the insect queen, he recalled the time when he felt the insect queen's state. In the process of evolution and mutation, the insect queen was in an awkward state, where it could neither advance nor retreat. It was only after hearing the chief guard mention the blade queen bee's natal poison core that he realized what the gray-haired, gray-eyed man had thrown over in the dimensional rift. The insect queen had absorbed the blade queen bee's natal poison core in order to mutate. However, Because the Blade Queen Bee's natal poison core did not have enough poison, the insect queen could not absorb enough poison and complete its mutation through the Blade Queen Bee's natal poison core. However, the poison had already been integrated into the insect queen's genetic model during the mutation process. If the insect queen's current state of stagnation during the mutation continued for a long time, it was likely to cause the insect queen bee's natal poison core to backfire. If that really happened, the insect queen's natal poison core, which had been engraved in the genetic model, would explode in its body. The insect queen's spiritual energy would be severely damaged by the Blade Queen Bee's spiritual poison. The worst-case scenario was that the insect queen might die from the poison's backlash. Most people would not easily talk about such a private matter like the phase state. However, since the chief guard of the spirit guards had asked, Lu Jie did not hide it, and simply explained the insect queen's current state. While Lu Jie was talking about the insect queen's situation, he had already passively followed Night Leaning Moon's footsteps through the chain bridge and stepped onto the land of spirit suppression. They headed toward the study room that Night Leaning Moon usually stayed in. After Night Leaning Moon understood the insect queen's situation, she immediately said, "Your contracted insect queen's current condition will be resolved. The insect queen that you're contracted with is currently in such a state. You only need to absorb the prime venom in the Blade Empress Bee's venom core once more to resolve it." A wry smile appeared on Lu Jie's face when he heard that. Carcinoma phase were already very rare in this world, let alone the fact that he had to find a specific carcinoma phase. This was a task that was as difficult as ascending to heaven. At that moment, Lu Jie heard Night Leaning Moon speaking unhurriedly again. "What you said just now was a coincidence, and you weren't wrong. Among the carcinoma phase that the spirit guards have taken in, there is a Blade Queen Bee." While speaking, Night Leaning Moon was already sitting at the table in her study room, where she usually looked through the secret letters submitted by the various guard envoys. When Lu Jie heard Night Leaning Moon's words, he immediately revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. How could he have forgotten that the spirit guards and guard envoys of the Radiance Federation had all the malignant phase and high-grade phase that were found in the Radiance Federation in the land of spirit suppression? How could he have forgotten that the spirit guards and guard envoys had stored all the malignant phase and high-grade phase in this land of spirit suppression? The spirit guards were in charge of all the phase in the world. From the chief guard's words, it seemed like he could take out the natal poison core from the Blade Queen Bee's natal poison core for the insect queen to use. The first one was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 531. Lu Jie quickly thanked her. "Thank you, Chief Guard." Night Leaning Moon's hand paused for a moment before she placed the pen back on the table and said, "Don't thank me yet. Don't be in a hurry to thank me. This is the reward you deserve for your contribution in the evolving dimensional rift. However, I'll give you two options. One is to obtain the Blade Queen Bee's natal poison core and allow the insect queen to complete its mutation. If you have the ability to rank in the top 10 of the Radiance 100 sequence within 2 years, you will be qualified to fight for the Radiance Envoy position. The Spirit Guards will give you another Sacred Source life form." When Lu Jie heard the Chief Guard of the Spirit Guards mention the first option, he was immediately shocked. The first option actually had a Sacred Source life form as a reward. However, it would not be easy to obtain this Sacred Source life form as a reward. The Radiance 100 sequence members were all concealing their strength, and everyone was probably holding back their anger. He wanted to become a dark horse and charge into the top 10 of the Radiance 100 sequence in 2 years to obtain the qualification to compete for the Radiance Envoy position. It could be said that the first condition was equivalent to the Spirit Guards investing a huge amount of money in him. However, if he wanted to obtain this investment, he had to first prove himself. That was a Sacred Source life form, a Class 5-dimensional rift that required the combined efforts of countless experts to resist could only produce one Sacred Source life form each time. Such an item was something that Lu Jie had never dared to dream of. However, Lu Jie's desire for the Sacred Source life form was no less than anyone else's. After all, Lu Jie could only contract the Insect Queen, which was a Source-type life form. He did not have as many choices as the others. However, Lu Jie did not immediately agree to the first generous option. Instead he asked, "What is it?" "Chief Guard, what about the second option?" Right after Lu Jie asked this question, Night Leaning Moon replied in a very straightforward manner. "The second option is to become my disciple." Lu Jie had been secretly shocked when he heard about the sacred source life form. However, when he heard that the second option could decide whether he could become the chief guard's disciple, Lu Jie felt as though his heart was about to jump out of his throat. Wasn't this too exciting? Was there even a need to choose to become the chief guard's disciple? Anyone who wasn't stupid would choose the second option without hesitation. Although Lu Jie wasn't stupid, he couldn't choose immediately. Powerhouses always paid attention to many things when accepting disciples. Very few powerhouses could tolerate their disciples who had already sworn an oath with the willpower rune. This was because the oath of the willpower rune represented an irresistible constraint. He had already sworn an oath with the willpower rune to become Lin Yuan's retainer knight. For Lu Jie, becoming the chief guard's disciple could be considered a blessing in disguise. In the past, Lu Jie would have fought for this opportunity with all his might. However, in Lu Jie's heart, becoming the chief guard's disciple wasn't the most important thing. Lu Jie reached out and touched the Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest on his chest. Lu Jie could not help but feel a little distressed. Perhaps during the Dimensional Rift's evolution, a small corner of the Class 2 Creation Master's retainer crest that Lin Yuan had given him had been blown off. This Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest gave Lu Jie new hope. After Lu Jie returned to the Radiance 100 sequence, he had never hidden his identity as a Class 2 Creation Master retainer. Every time he went out, no matter what clothes he wore, he would carefully wear the Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest on his chest. In the Radiance 100 sequence, Lu Jie wearing the Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest didn't cause any uproar. However, this was only the case in the Radiance 100 sequence. As the Radiance 100 sequence number 30, the news of Lu Jie wearing the Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest quickly blew up on the Star Web's post bar and forums. Perhaps many people thought that becoming a Class 2 Creation Master retainer was not a glorious thing given Lu Jie's identity. However, this Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest, which might seem dishonorable to others, was his life. Lu Jie was already thinking that when he left the Spirit Guards, if the Chief Guard had no other matters, he would dare to go back before tonight. He would first go to the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association to mend this Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest. If he couldn't make it in time, he would buy some ingredients first. When Lin Yuan returned to the mansion, he would be able to have a good meal that he cooked. Night Leaning Moon was one of the top experts in the Radiance Federation, one of the 13 seats in the Imperial Court Council, and her identity was on par with the Moon Empress. However, when she expressionlessly said that the second choice was to become her disciple, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. The stronger one was, the more they would pay attention to their fetters. Night Leaning Moon had never accepted a disciple before. She wanted to accept one, because she saw the changes in the Moon Empress after finding a disciple. She thought that it was time for her to find a legacy. However, Night Leaning Moon had already said that she wanted to accept a disciple, but there was no response for a long time. Night Leaning Moon hated waiting for others to make a decision because of the shadow of her childhood. What kind of human suffering was this? Night Leaning Moon held the pen in her hand and twirled it a few times, waiting for Lu Jie to make a decision. At this moment, Night Leaning Moon saw Lu Jie raise his head and speak in a very straightforward manner. Chief Guard, I have already sworn on a willpower rune to become someone else's retainer. Without him, I wouldn't be where I am now. If you mind me becoming someone else's retainer, then I will choose the first option. After hearing Lu Jie's words, Night Leaning Moon immediately put her pen on the table. His fingers lightly tapped on the table. He felt that the disciple he was about to accept was not very bright. Since he had decided to accept her as his disciple, shouldn't he have investigated her thoroughly? When thinking about the relationship between Lu Jie and the Moon Empress disciple, Night-leaning Moon couldn't help but recall the time when she and the Moon Empress were young. Back then, he had almost become the Moon Empress retainer knight. However, the Moon Empress had scolded him for not being able to take care of himself, and for singing out of tune. He did not become the Moon Empress retainer knight. He had allowed Songyu, the stupid girl who didn't know how to smile, and Mystic Moon, the stinky spirit creature, to take the lead. Time was always full of twists and turns. He always thought that it was too far away for him to see clearly, but now it suddenly appeared in front of him. If he were to accept Lu Jie as his disciple, everything would form a reincarnation cycle. Night-leaning Moon rather admired Lu Jie's straightforwardness. His disciple might be a little silly, but he was surprisingly honest. My name is Night-leaning Moon. I will be your master from now on. Second more. Begging for monthly votes, recommendation votes, moi. Button wishing the big sister reading a book a happy goddess day. End of this chapter. Chapter 532. With that, Night-leaning Moon waved her hand and threw a box carved from white jade at Lu Jie. Through the outside of the white jade box, Lu Jie could faintly see a layer of rainbow light shining inside. When he saw the rainbow light inside the white jade box, he felt that it was unusually familiar, as though he had seen it not long ago. Lu Jie could not help but have a guess in his heart. When Lu Jie opened the white jade box, he saw a ball of rainbow light inside. The seven-colored ball of light was the legendary sacred source life form. When he suddenly received the sacred source life form from his newly acknowledged master, Lu Jie felt a little surprised and terrified. Lu Jie did not accept the white jade box containing the sacred source life form. Instead, he hurriedly placed the box on the table in front of Night-leaning Moon and said, "Master, I haven't completed the first condition. I haven't reached the top 10 of the Radiance 100 sequence, and obtained the right to compete for the Radiance Envoy position." Night-leaning Moon waved her hand again. A few petals that glowed with blue light immediately appeared on the table. The bottom of these petals was as blue as the sea, and there was still flower juice that had not yet dried. They carried a fragrance that relaxed the soul. It was obvious that they had been picked not long ago. Since you call me master, I naturally have to fulfill my responsibility as a master. How can I, Night-leaning Moon, not have a sacred source life form as my disciple? You're already over 20 years old, so you can totally contract a sacred source life form. These few petals of blue snow soul fragrance flower juice can protect your soul and allow you to contract the sacred source life form without suffering any damage to your soul. Why don't you form a contract with this sacred source life form while I protect you here? If Lu Jie's words were said to be very straightforward, then Lu Jie's words were completely different. Now Night-leaning Moon spoke as though it was a matter of course. She did not know why, but when she heard Lu Jie say the word master, Night-leaning Moon only felt that her entire body had a different kind of feeling. It could be said to be a sense of responsibility. However, this sense of responsibility gave Night-leaning Moon a very subtle feeling. Unlike the heavy sense of responsibility of being the chief guard of the spirit guards, the sense of responsibility that appeared after becoming a master was much more delicate. In the past, Night-leaning Moon was someone who had never had a junior, but now that she had accepted Lu Jie as her disciple, Night-leaning Moon gained a junior out of thin air. Furthermore, it was his most direct descendant. Or it could be said that he was a descendant who had inherited his legacy. Previously, Night-leaning Moon felt that the Moon Empress was overly nice to her disciple. However, after becoming a master, Night-leaning Moon suddenly felt that the Moon Empress' actions back then were understandable. Didn't he take back the petals of the blue snow soul fragrance very naturally? Lu Jie felt like his brain couldn't process what was going on. Looking at the azure blue petals on the table, and hearing the name Blue Snow Soul Fragrance, Lu Jie gave a simple and honest smile. This name undoubtedly touched the blind spot of Lu Jie's knowledge. Lu Jie had never heard of the Blue Snow Soul Fragrance, but something that could assist a sacred source life form in forming a contract had to be extraordinary. This was because Lu Jie could feel how precious these few petals of blue snow soul incense were from the gentle way his master was handling it. Master, then the first choice. Before Lu Jie could finish his sentence, Night-leaning moon spoke, as if it was a matter of course. When you weren't my disciple, I naturally gave you as many things as you deserved. But now that you've become my disciple, things are different. Night-leaning moon stood up as she spoke. She picked up the sacred source life form from the white jade box on the table and handed it to Lu Jie. Forming a contract with a sacred source life form is very particular. You can't just use a blood contract. A blood contract with a sacred source life form forms a bloodline link between you and the sacred source life form. However, this bloodline link is not binding and is only equal. Sacred source life forms were born with high intelligence and had their own likes and dislikes. Therefore, using blood to form a bloodline contract of equal status was not the best choice. Lu Jie reached out his hand and smiled sheepishly as he scratched the back of his head. Lu Jie only knew about sacred source life forms, but he knew very little about sacred source life forms. For someone like Lu Jie, who had never dared to dream of forming a contract with a sacred source life form, it was naturally impossible for him to know about it. Night-leaning moon looked at Lu Jie's expression and picked up the petals of the blue snow soul orchid on the table. The best way to form a contract with a sacred source life form is to use the marrow in your bones to form a contract with the sacred source life form. This type of contract is called a marrow contract. A marrow contract can make a sacred source life form submit, but at the same time, your soul will also be resisted by the sacred source life form. Every sacred source life form contains a complete fragment of another world outside the dimensional hub, and it upholds a complete law. The function of this complete law is like the existence of truth. Even if an ordinary person's soul matures after the age of 20, they still cannot contend against a sacred source life form. However, with these petals from the creation breed blue snow soul fragrance, you can rest easy when forming a contract with a sacred source life form, and use the marrow in your bones to form a blood contract with the sacred source life form. When forming a contract with a sacred source life form, you need to completely fuse the sacred source life form into your soul in order to force the sacred source life form to submit. This process will take a long time. However, with these 3 petals of the blue snow soul fragrance, you can complete the contract in a few hours. Night-leaning moon's voice was as crisp as an oriole's. As she spoke, Night-leaning moon explained to Lu Jie in an unusually serious manner. Even though Lu Jie did not ask any questions, the questions were posed through his facial expressions. After listening to Night-leaning moon's explanation, Lu Jie immediately understood how to form a contract with the sacred source life form. At the same time, Lu Jie also understood how precious the blue snow soul fragrance was. The blue snow soul fragrance was a spiritual ingredient that came from a creation breed fae. Just the blue snow soul fragrance's ability to protect one's soul was enough to show how precious it was. The soul had always been the most mysterious existence. Spiritual ingredients that could protect the soul had always been the rarest of all spiritual ingredients. At the same time, it was also the most sought-after item by high-ranking spirit chi professionals. Now that he had Night-leaning moon as his master, Lu Jie pondered for a moment before saying, "Thank you, master. Thank you, master." After the battle in the dimensional rift, Lu Jie clearly felt that he was lacking in strength. The first time. End of this chapter. Chapter 533. Since Lin Yuan had restored a large amount of spiritual power in his body, the insect C's combat power had been 3 times that of Lu Jie's own combat power. However, even if Lu Jie's strength had been increased by 3 times, he still could not stand out like a sword and cut through the thorns under Lin Yuan's feet at the critical moment. Once the insect queen's insects were exhausted, even if he wanted to fulfill his duty as a shield, he could only clumsily use his body as a shield. Lu Jie felt helpless and pained at his own incompetence. He was now ranked 30th in the Radiance 100 sequence, and the cocoon of evolution had parasitized the insect queen, which had greatly enhanced its abilities. However, as he watched Lin Yuan's continuous improvement, Lu Jie only felt the pressure in his heart increasing. Lu Jie knew that as long as Lin Yuan did not slow down, Lin Yuan would be able to surpass him. It would not take long for Lin Yuan to surpass him. At that time, the sword and shield that Lu Jie had turned into would become dull and frail in the face of his faith. Now that he had a master, he had a chance to rise and soar. This was definitely a good opportunity for Lu Jie, who had always been doubtful about himself. Night Leaning Moon needed to understand Lu Jie's information in advance before accepting a disciple, and Lu Jie also needed to think carefully. For someone like Lu Jie who valued relationships, once he called Night Leaning Moon his master, would be his master for life. When Night Leaning Moon heard Lu Jie's thanks, she frowned slightly and said, "I'm your master." "I'm your master, why are you thanking me? Let's begin. I found this sacred source life form in the core of the Class 5 Swamp Dimensional Rift. I hope this sacred source life form's ability can complement your contracted insect queen." No one could know the sacred source life form's functions and effects before the contract was made. Even an absolute expert like Night Leaning Moon could not pry into the sacred source life form's original appearance under the rainbow light. It could be said that forming a contract with a sacred source life form was like opening a blind box. The items in the box had their own functions. However, they might not be compatible with the items that one already possessed. Night Leaning Moon said this because she was Lu Jie's master, and her words were like a blessing to Lu Jie. However, it did not matter if this sacred source life form was really useless to the insect queen. A contract with a sacred source life form was equivalent to giving Lu Jiexian an irrefutable method. A few hours later, an aura suddenly soared into the sky. All the experts in the spirit guards felt as if they had fallen into eternal darkness, a long night where all living things sank. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying pressure disappeared. Many spirit guards experts looked in the direction of the chief guard's study. He secretly wondered what was wrong with the chief guard. Why did she suddenly release her aura? At this moment, Night Leaning Moon's crisp laughter, like that of an oriole, suddenly came from within the study. Night Leaning Moon was standing at the side of the table. The boundless spiritual energy from her hands formed a layer of spiritual energy cyclone, protecting the secret letters sent by the guard envoys on the table behind her. Lu Jie opened his eyes and looked at Night Leaning Moon apologetically as a layer of strange green light appeared over his body. "Teacher, I didn't know that sacred source life forms would automatically attack after completing the contract and fusing with the soul." Although Lu Jie was apologizing, his eyes were filled with disbelief and pleasant surprise. Night Leaning Moon's face was covered by a black veil, and her facial expression could not be seen. However, based on the curve of Night Leaning Moon's eyes, it was obvious that she was smiling. After the sacred source life form completes the marrow contract and submits to your soul, it will automatically launch an attack. This attack is called the sacred source first cry. It symbolizes the birth of a truth-like function. This first cry is the sacred source life form's way of proving its arrival to the world. Night Leaning Moon nodded with satisfaction. Just by looking at the attack of your contracted sacred source life form's first cry, I can confirm that you have contracted a sacred source life form that specializes in attacking. Not bad. You are indeed my disciple. You are in the same direction as me. Lu Jie now truly possessed a sacred source life form. After obtaining a sacred source life form, Lu Jie finally understood how powerful a sacred source life form was. Apart from the sacred source life form's own abilities, Lu Jie was even more delighted that his contracted sacred source life form and the insect queen's functions complemented each other. A flame of confidence ignited in Lu Jie's eyes. Lu Jie reached out and touched the Class 2 Creation Master retainer crest on his chest. It was missing a corner. He clenched the crest tighter in his palm. But at this time, Lu Jie was only using his own fingers. Lu Jie's palm gently wrapped around the damaged Class 2 Creation Master's retainer crest, as though he was afraid of crushing it. Just as Lu Jie was about to show Night Leaning Moon his contracted sacred source life form, she interrupted him. Night Leaning Moon's expression was unusually serious and solemn. Never tell anyone about the sacred source life form's abilities, no matter who it is. Not even the people closest to you. After Night Leaning Moon finished her sentence, she saw that Lu Jie was listening attentively to her words. The Blade Queen Bee anomaly. I had already ordered someone to retrieve it before you arrived. However, the blade queen bee's natal poison core can only be formed after it empties its insect eggs and devours a large number of fays. That's why I wasted some time. Based on the time, the natal poison core should be formed by now. Lu Jie followed Night Leaning Moon's footsteps and walked out of the study. The Lu Jie who walked out of the study was completely different from the Lu Jie who had walked in. If Lu Jie had been a piece of silver before, he might still look like a piece of silver now. But the inside of the silver had been replaced with real gold. Once Lu Jie's contracted insect queen completed its evolution, the layer of silver on the surface of Lu Jie's body would be replaced with the same kind of real gold. After Lu Jie left the study, he realized that it had been windy when he arrived. However, the noon sun was high in the sky, and the bright sunlight shone on his body. It made his whole body feel warm and comfortable. Mystic Moon looked at the crispy golden spirit savory pig on the jade whalebone table, and could not help but mourn for 3 seconds in her heart. She wondered what had happened to the other 2 spirit savory pigs in the fragrant kitchen pavilion after she left. But at this moment, there were only 2 spirit savory pigs left in this world. Moreover, they were boars. It seemed that the Chef Supreme's postpartum care for sows would not be of any use in the future. Second update. Stay up late. End of this chapter. Chapter 534. The Moon Empress cut the ribs of the spirit savory pig into small pieces and sprinkled some plum sauce, made from several types of diamond plums. Then, he handed the plate of spirit savory pork ribs to Lin Yuan and said, "That's right. These spirit savory pigs have been fed too much good stuff by Chef Venerable. They're a little fat now. Even if I use the top-notch flaming meteor quake flames from the class 5-dimensional rift to roast it, it's still a little greasy." The plum jam made from the heart plum has a moderate amount of sweetness and sourness. It's very easy to get rid of the greasy taste, and it's not bad to eat with it. Earlier, Cold Moon felt that the Moon Empress was exaggerating to use the diamond smooth crystal silk jujube to grind into date cheese. At this moment, Mystic Moon felt that the Moon Empress was too exaggerated. The heart-containing plum was a type of medicine that could heal injuries to one's origin. A healing-type spirit chi professional might be able to heal all sorts of injuries, but it was a different story altogether. However, if a spirit chi professional's contracted fey didn't have any special exclusive skills, it could only help the spirit chi professional, fey, or source-type life forms recover from external injuries. An injury to the heart could no longer be considered an external injury. Instead, it could be considered as an injury to one's origin. A creation master would need to concoct a spirit fluid with spiritual ingredients to aid in the recovery. The plums produced by the plant-type fey, heart plum, were extremely effective in healing heart injuries. Not only were low-grade heart plums available in the Star Web's Rare Lifeform Pavilion, but they could also be bought from large merchant associations. They were not considered precious items. However, the diamond heart plum was different. The heart plum was a fey that was extremely difficult to nurture. Most of the feys, including the spirit siphon goldfish that needed to absorb several times more spirit chi than normal feys, would be able to evolve normally after absorbing enough spirit chi. However, heart plum would be stuck in the process of reaching gold rank. Only after absorbing the tree cores of 10 heart plums of the same level as him would he be able to advance. In order to cultivate a high-grade heart plum, who knew how many low-grade heart plums, he would need to use his own tree core as a sacrifice. In the hands of a creation master, the silver heart-containing plum would be able to heal injuries caused by violent concussions. In the hands of a creation master, the platinum heart plum could even repair the cracks in the walls of the heart. In the hands of a creation master, the diamond heart plum could even repair the shattered atrium and ventricles of the heart. It was considered a life-saving item. Another characteristic of the heart plum was that it tasted great. The heart-containing plum was a spirit material that could heal injuries to one's origin, and its taste was far superior to that of high-rank plums. Some rich and powerful families had the habit of eating heart plum fruits. They would even add dried heart plum fruits to their dishes as seasoning. However, Even the most extravagant and wealthy families wouldn't easily consume heart plums that were above the gold rank. Mystic Moon understood that the Moon Empress was not an extravagant person. She was using diamond heart plums to make plum jam to nourish Lin Yuan's body. The heart was an organ used to pump blood. If Lin Yuan lost too much blood for a period of time, it would affect the heart's pumping function. However, Lin Yuan had already eaten half of the Rabbit Emperor's carrot. No matter how severe his injuries were, he would probably be full of energy now. The Leaning Moon Mountain's orchard had 7 or 8 diamond heart-containing plum trees, and they would produce a batch of plums every year. However, Lin Yuan didn't need the diamond heart-containing plum trees to nourish his heart again. It could be said that every time Mystic Moon saw the Moon Empress interacting with Lin Yuan, he would have a new understanding of how a master doted on her disciple. As for using the meteor-shaking flame to roast a whole pig, it wasn't considered a waste. Using the meteor-shaking flame to roast meat wouldn't cause any damage, but in this world, only Lord Chef Supreme would use such a top-notch flame to roast meat every day. Only the Moon Empress could do it. The Moon Empress probably wanted to use the vibrations of the meteor-shaking flame to shake the fat out of the spirit-savory pig. When Mystic Moon saw the Moon Empress handing Lin Yuan a plate of sliced pork ribs, he saw the cold moon also carefully shaving the spirit-savory pig's ribs. She cut off the most seasoned meat from the spirit-savory pig's ribs and placed them on the plate. Mystic Moon was a little curious. Didn't Cold Moon usually not eat meat? Why was she cutting the spirit-savory pig's ribs now? Mystic Moon saw Cold Moon cut off a piece of roasted golden and crispy pork skin after cutting the pork skin into thin shreds. After Cold Moon cut the pork skin into thin shreds, she put a spoonful of plum sauce on top of the crispy pork skin and boneless pork slices. This allowed the sweet and sour plum, the crispy pork skin, and the fragrant and soft pork to perfectly blend together. It had 2 completely different textures, and paired with the sweet and sour taste, it could be said to be the best way to eat the spirit-savory pig. Mystic Moon couldn't help but lament that people changed. Cold Moon usually didn't eat meat, but now, she seemed to have become a gourmet. Just as Mystic Moon was lamenting, he saw that Cold Moon was just like the Moon Empress. However, Cold Moon didn't place the plate in front of Lin Yuan, but in front of Chu Ci. Immediately after, Mystic Moon realized that Cold Moon was looking at her with eyes full of flaunting. It was as if she was saying, "Hee, you're so useless. You've lived for so long, but you can't even get a disciple." Mystic Moon felt that the spirit-savory pig in her mouth didn't taste good anymore. The pair of master and disciple, and the pair of brother and sister, seemed to be constantly showing off their cat food. On the other hand, he had become a trembling meow that could only choose to eat cat food. Mystic Moon couldn't help but think of accepting a disciple. As Lin Yuan ate the pork ribs that the Moon Empress had cut for him, he felt the Moon Empress care for him. Lin Yuan also asked about the sacred source life form in the depths of his soul. When the Moon Empress had mentioned the sacred source life form to Lin Yuan, she had told him not to tell anyone about his sacred source life form's abilities. Lin Yuan didn't want to ask about his contracted sacred source life form's abilities. This was because he still didn't know what abilities his contracted sacred source life form had. "Master, is it possible for sacred source life forms to fuse?" The Moon Empress was stunned by Lin Yuan's question, but she quickly replied, "Some people's souls are strong enough to contract 2 sacred source life forms. Some people's souls are strong enough to form a contract with 2 sacred source life forms, but I've never heard of anyone fusing sacred source life forms." The Moon Empress didn't know why Lin Yuan was asking this question, but she knew that Lin Yuan had already contracted a sacred source life form in the dimensional rift. Therefore, now that Lin Yuan was asking about sacred source life forms, the Moon Empress was especially attentive. First, end of this chapter. Chapter 535. After listening to Lin Yuan's words, the Moon Empress knew that she needed to explain more about sacred source life forms. After listening to Lin Yuan's words, the Moon Empress knew that she needed to explain more about sacred source life forms. The Moon Empress could not help but wonder if her disciple had formed a contract with a sacred source life form. He wanted to find another sacred source life form and fuse it with another sacred source life form. He wanted to fuse two completely different sacred source life forms into a new sacred source life form. What kind of strange idea was that? When Mystic Moon heard Lin Yuan's words, she nearly choked on the roasted meat in her mouth. Mystic Moon admired Lin Yuan's imagination. What kind of imagination did he have to come up with such a high-class method? If it was really possible, wouldn't the sacred source life form be able to continuously absorb new sacred source life forms to increase its functionality? The Moon Empress saw that Lin Yuan was almost done with the meat on his plate. She picked up a small, white bowl and prepared to serve Lin Yuan a bowl of jujube cheese as dessert. The Moon Empress doted on Lin Yuan, but it was not because she had given him a mysterious lifestyle. The Moon Empress was worried about Lin Yuan's health because she had been frightened when Lin Yuan had come out of the dimensional rift. This shock wasn't because the Moon Empress saw Lin Yuan's hands, which were almost devoid of flesh and bones. Instead, it was because Lin Yuan had formed a marrow contract with a sacred source life form before the age of 20, allowing the sacred source life form to submit to him and fuse with his soul. This was also why the Moon Empress had broken the little rabbit's carrot without hesitation and not given it to Lin Yuan. Now, the Moon Empress was glad that Lin Yuan had formed a marrow contract with the sacred source life form. A spirit chi professional forming a contract with the sacred source life form was considered an extremely important matter in one's life. There was no way to renege or start over. If Lin Yuan had only used a blood contract when forming a contract with the sacred source life form, it was very likely that when he used the sacred source life form in the future, he would not be able to form a contract with the sacred source life form as easily as he could with a marrow contract. At Lin Yuan's current age and strength, the difference between forming a blood contract and a marrow contract with the sacred source life form was not obvious. However, when Lin Yuan became a top-notch expert, the difference between a blood contract and a marrow contract would be infinitely greater. Therefore, in the Moon Empress' opinion, this kind of coincidence was more of a blessing and luck for Lin Yuan than forming a contract with the sacred source life form. Lin Yuan heard the Moon Empress answer. He knew that his contracted sacred source life form's fusion phenomenon was unusual. Even an expert like the Moon Empress had never heard of such a situation. After Lin Yuan woke up, he realized that there really was a young girl with closed eyes, a crown on her head, and a sharp sword in her arms in the depths of his soul. He knew that the dream he had when he was unconscious was actually what really happened in the depths of his soul. Lin Yuan recalled the familiar reddish-gold radiance that enveloped the depths of his soul. This reddish-gold radiance was the color of the Morbius bracelet. Lin Yuan was not a fool. When Lin Yuan woke up and realized that Morbius was asleep, he was sure that the reddish-gold light that had enveloped his soul and allowed the two sacred source life forms to fuse had come from Morbius. Ever since he had formed a contract with Morbius, he had sensed that it was not as simple as an ordinary fae. Before Lin Yuan had come into contact with a source-type item, he had only treated Morbius as a source-type item. After coming into contact with a source-type item, Lin Yuan felt that Morbius' ability was not something that a source-type item could compare to. Not long after, Lin Yuan found out about the existence of a sacred source life form. Lin Yuan could not help but wonder if Morbius, which had been born with him, was a sacred source life form. However, when he thought of the two rebellious sacred source life forms in the depths of his soul, they instinctively felt fear when they saw the reddish-gold light that had enveloped his soul. Lin Yuan could not help but boldly guess if Morbius was in existence of a higher level than a sacred source life form. Lin Yuan did not continue to tell the Moon Empress about the fusion of the sacred source life forms in the depths of his soul. Since his master had never heard of it, he would only worry her. If he told her, it would only make her worry. In short, the fusion of two sacred source life forms would not be too weak. After asking about the sacred source life forms, Lin Yuan raised his head, put down the spoon in his hand, and spoke to the Moon Empress in a very serious tone. Master, I heard a person called Hunting Ashes mention Lord Seventh Page War in the Dimensional Rift. After hearing Lin Yuan's question, The Moon Empress, who had been helping Lin Yuan with the jujube cheese with a smile on her face, immediately turned serious. Cold Moon's expression suddenly turned cold. Black Moon's beautiful eyes, which had a silver sheen, immediately narrowed. The Moon Empress' expression only turned serious for a moment before she returned to her original smile. She placed the jujube cheese on the table in front of Lin Yuan and said, "Drink some of this jujube cheese. Drink some of this jujube. This jujube is very good for replenishing blood. You can also try to see if the master's cooking has improved." Lin Yuan saw the expressions of his master, Cold Moon and Black Moon. He knew that they already knew what he wanted to express, and which faction the name Seventh Page War belonged to. When his master, the Moon Empress, knew the other party's name and faction, she immediately changed the topic. This meant that his master did not want him to understand too much about this matter. Lin Yuan also did not want to participate in this matter. Lin Yuan had used all his strength, and even his life to stop the dimensional rift's evolution. He had already done what he had to do according to his heart and will. Lin Yuan understood that although his strength had been improving, he was still a little too weak in the face of such a matter. Only an expert like his master, the Moon Empress, could shoulder such a responsibility. Lin Yuan lowered his head to drink the jujube cheese in the bowl, and found that it was surprisingly not sweet. However, the mellow jujube fragrance seemed to bring Lin Yuan to the depths of the jujube flowers. At that moment, the Moon Empress raised her hand, and a rainbow ball of light appeared in her palm. "This is your personal reward from the spirit guards for stopping the dimensional rift's evolution. You have already contracted a sacred source life form. Even if you want to try to contract a second or two sacred source life forms, your soul will need at least 3 years to recover. Also, I have already prepared your sacred source life form for you, so you can decide what to do with it." As she spoke, the Moon Empress had already handed the sacred source life form to Lin Yuan. "It's too difficult for me. I get criticized for writing about battles and daily life. I write about the familiars, but don't introduce the strange phase and things inside. I might as well write a traditional fantasy novel and not write a niche novel. I have always loved to read transformation novels and the summoning and beast-taming novels. Writing novels is also a hobby, because Book Desolation wanted to write a novel he had been writing until now. I will read everyone's suggestions carefully, but for those who don't like it, please don't scold me. Thank you. Please, 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 I am really serious about writing. Also, please get monthly votes and recommendation votes. I will set up a flag and return the updates tomorrow." End of this chapter. Chapter 536. After Lin Yuan held the sacred source life form in his hand, the Moon Empress spoke to Lin Yuan in a serious tone. "In 3 years, if you want to try to contract a sacred source life form with your soul, you must be by my side. I will protect you." As the Moon Empress spoke, she could not help but think about the time when Lin Yuan had been spat out by the dimensional rift. The extent to which his soul had been shattered by the sacred source life form's impact. The Moon Empress had insisted that Lin Yuan be by her side the next time he tried to contract a sacred source life form. It was not that only by protecting Lin Yuan would he be able to increase his chances of contracting a second sacred source life form. The soul was not like a talent. Even those with poor talent, as long as they worked hard enough, they could achieve the same results as those with high talent through hard work. However, the gap between souls was already determined from birth. It was a chasm that could not be crossed. Even the rarest spiritual ingredient could only protect the contractor's soul from the sacred source life form's impact. When a spirit chi professional tried to contract a second sacred source life form, it could not increase the chances of contracting a second sacred source life form. The Moon Empress had said this because she did not want Lin Yuan to experience a second time when his soul was on the brink of shattering. Upon hearing the Moon Empress' caring words, Lin Yuan smiled brightly, revealing his white teeth. He spoke as though he was making a promise. "Don't worry, Master. When I try to contract a second sacred source life form, I will definitely be by your side." When the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan's childish smile and guaranteed tone, she was slightly startled. Then she smiled from the bottom of her heart. The Moon Empress had always felt that Lin Yuan was a little mature. Even though Lin Yuan looked like an 18-year-old handsome youth, be it the way he spoke or the way he did things, it was more like a seasoned adult. The Moon Empress had always felt a little melancholic about this. If Lin Yuan was someone else's disciple, the Moon Empress might admire his way of speaking and doing things. However, Lin Yuan was her disciple. When it came to her disciple, the Moon Empress hoped that Lin Yuan would not put so many burdens on her shoulders. As Lin Yuan's master, the Moon Empress hoped that Lin Yuan would be like an 18-year-old youth and live a carefree life. Now that Lin Yuan had inadvertently revealed his youthful side, the Moon Empress could not help but feel that it was very beautiful. Lin Yuan stored the sacred source life form in the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box and drank the jujube cheese that had the pure aroma of jujube flowers. Lin Yuan could not help but think about how he should use this sacred source life form. He raised his head and looked at Chu Si, who was sitting on the table and filling a bowl with jujubes for Cold Moon. Lin Yuan watched as she scooped the jujube cheese and suddenly reflected on himself. It could be said that as the Moon Empress disciple, he had always been receiving meticulous care from his master. He had also taken a lot of good things from the Radiant Moon Palace before, but every time he brought good things to the Radiant Moon Palace, the Radiant Moon Palace wouldn't accept it. The Moon Empress would always say, "Why did you take things when you came to your own home? Master has everything here." Then she would ask him to take it back. Gradually, Lin Yuan stopped taking things from the Radiant Moon Palace. But now, Lin Yuan felt that he had been thinking about something wrong. He had not expected to be taught a lesson by his younger sister. He had never done something as heartwarming as Chu Si filling a bowl of jujubes for Cold Moon for his master, the Moon Empress. Just as Lin Yuan was looking at Chu Si, Cold Moon, who was next to her, looked at Lin Yuan with a strange expression. Cold Moon hesitated for a few seconds before saying, "Your Highness, Chu Si still has a few more days. She will only be 16 after the new year, and there is still a long way to go before she turns 20. There is no hurry to contract a sacred source life form. When the time comes as her master, I will also prepare a sacred source life form for Chu Si." When Lin Yuan heard Cold Moon's words, he felt that Cold Moon was a little like a lioness protecting her cubs on the prairie. Although Cold Moon did not say it explicitly, Lin Yuan could see her expression and tone. He could feel Cold Moon's possessiveness toward Chu Si. Lin Yuan smiled awkwardly. He could not help but feel that after Chu Si had a master, it was a little difficult for him, as her brother, to give her anything. However, from Cold Moon's words, Lin Yuan could feel that she cared about Chu Si. "Aunt Cold Moon, I will have to trouble you in the future." When Cold Moon heard Lin Yuan's words, the coldness that had covered her face when she heard the words "seventh page war" immediately melted. Her usually expressionless face revealed a rare smile. "Lin Yuan, don't worry." This time, Cold Moon did not call Lin Yuan young lord. Instead, she called him by his name. Therefore, Cold Moon did not treat Lin Yuan as the young lord of the Radiant Moon Palace. She only treated him as her disciple Chu Si's brother. Cold Moon's "don't worry" was in response to Lin Yuan's request as Chu Si's brother. Lin Yuan was not only happy that Chu Si could become Cold Moon's disciple, but he also felt at ease. Just like when he had been ambushed by Chung Wu in the royal capital suburbs, and his life had been hanging by a thread, Lin Yuan had subconsciously thought about what Chu Si would do if he really died. However, now that Chu Si had Cold Moon as her master, Lin Yuan did not need to worry about Chu Si's safety and life even if his life was hanging by a thread. Lin Yuan had looked at Chu Si previously, because the first person he had thought of after obtaining another sacred source life form was his younger sister. However, Lin Yuan had never thought of letting Chu Si contract a sacred source life form before she turned 20. His master, the Moon Empress, had mentioned many times that spirit chi professionals had to wait until their souls had matured before they could contract a sacred source life form. There must be a reason for this. This meant that contracting a sacred source life form before a spirit chi professional's soul matured at the age of 20 would be extremely harmful to the spirit chi professional's soul. Lin Yuan had Morbius, which had allowed him to survive through the reddish-gold light that enveloped the depths of his soul. However, Morbius was an existence that only he had. Lin Yuan was certain that Chu Xi had always been pure and clean since she was born. She did not have a companion Fey like Morbius. Since Lin Yuan did not need to care about Chu Xi, he made a choice about the sacred source life form. Among the people in his faction, he felt that the most suitable candidates were Lu Jie and the Mother of Bloodbath. However, compared to the Mother of Bloodbath, Lin Yuan was more inclined to let Lu Jie contract this sacred source life form. The first choice was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 537. Lu Jie was now 25 years old and had reached the age where he could contract a sacred source life form. He did not know how long it would take for the Mother of Bloodbath to become a creation breed. Lin Yuan did not know how much stronger the Mother of Bloodbath's suzerain/myth 2 strength would be after eating a bunch of blood brew grapes from the blood brew grapevine. Even if he allowed Red Thorn to use its full strength to absorb flesh energy and form the Eye of Relinquish, the Mother of Bloodbath would not be able to do so. The Eye of Relinquish would nurture the blood brew grapevine so that it could grow blood brew grapes as quickly as possible. However, even a hardworking farmer like him was afraid of encountering a true glutton. Therefore, compared to the Mother of Bloodbath, who did not know when it would become a creation breed, Lin Yuan was much stronger. Letting Lu Jie contract this sacred source life form was undoubtedly the best choice. As for Zhou Luo, who had gone through life and death with him in the dimensional rift, Lin Yuan did not intend to give him a sacred source life form. However, Lin Yuan no longer regarded Zhou Luo as a white-clothed follower under his Sky City. He treated Zhou Luo as one of his own. Lin Yuan's principle for nurturing white-clothed servants was to use high-quality bronze Fays in exchange for their loyalty. As for the resources to nurture high-grade Fays after the white-clothed servants' loyalty, the white-clothed servants would have to earn it themselves. However, Lin Yuan intended to pour in a lot of his resources for Zhou Luo. He wanted to quickly upgrade Zhou Luo's Lava Dragon Lizard and the Bronze/Epic Dark Snake Dragon Lizard that he had just contracted and had yet to nurture. As for the Bronze/Epic Dark Snake Dragon Lizard, Lin Yuan planned to upgrade it from Epic to Legend at Bronze before Zhou Luo nurtured it to Silver. In the beginning, Zhou Luo had sworn an allegiance oath to Lin Yuan as a white-clothed servant and was considered a servant of Sky City. However, after experiencing a life-and-death situation and Zhou Luo's willingness to step forward, Lin Yuan had completely acknowledged Zhou Luo. Although there had been many twists and turns on his return from Indigo Azure City, he had also gained a lot. Not to mention the gains from the Indigo Azure Sea market. Just the fact that he had contracted a sacred source life form was enough for Lin Yuan to not have experienced this storm in vain. It was almost the new year, and after that, it would be the S Tournament Finals season. During the season of the S Tournament, before the finals of the S Tournament, there was also a high-profile battle for the Radiance 100 sequence. He planned to run his faction in the royal capital during the period before the Radiance 100 sequence competition. After he had his exclusive territory on Star Web, he had yet to exercise those 3 rights. Announce the management functions of your private faction to other factions with private territories on Star Web. He planned to take advantage of the new year to manage his Star Web private territory and spread his sense of superiority as a private faction. Lin Yuan wanted to go back to his old trade and be a cute merchant that people would come and ask him if he had good goods. After the meal, the two of them started to learn from their respective masters. During the question and answer session with the Moon Empress, Lin Yuan asked all the questions he had encountered during this period of time. Of course, most of the problems Lin Yuan raised were related to sacred source life forms. Although Lin Yuan now possessed a sacred source life form, he was still clueless about its concept. From the Moon Empress answers, Lin Yuan learned that sacred source life forms were divided into blood and marrow contracts. When Lin Yuan thought about the injuries he had sustained when grabbing the sacred source life form, he knew that he must have formed a marrow contract with 2 sacred source life forms at the same time. After listening to the Moon Empress' explanation about the risks of forming a marrow contract, Lin Yuan could not help but feel a lingering fear. At the same time, he was even more curious about what kind of existence Morbius, which had accompanied him, was. It was actually able to protect his soul, which was about to shatter, in such a dangerous situation. After the question and answer session, Lin Yuan could be said to have a basic understanding of sacred source life forms. When Lin Yuan asked questions, the Moon Empress realized that many of his questions could directly touch on the essence of things. Just through this question and answer session, the Moon Empress could feel Lin Yuan's rapid improvement during this period of time. When answering Lin Yuan's questions, the Moon Empress was a little stunned. It seemed that she had only accepted Lin Yuan as a disciple for half a year. However, Lin Yuan's growth speed in this half a year was equivalent to at least 5 years of hard work by other geniuses. Moreover, the Moon Empress was clear in her heart that her disciple, Lin Yuan, must be hiding some tricks that he usually did not use. At the very least, Lin Yuan's identity as a healing-type spirit qi professional was completely genuine. Otherwise, when Lu Jie had been spat out by the dimensional rift and had fallen into a coma, his body would not have overflowed with such dense vitality. Lin Yuan had not yet become an A-rank spirit qi professional and could not circulate the spiritual power in his body to form a spirit qi cyclone. Without a protective spirit qi cyclone, what kind of healing ability did Lin Yuan have to be able to take out the sacred source life forms from the evolving dimensional rift? It had to be known that in order to take out the sacred source life forms and source-type life forms from the dimensional hub's spatial energy fluctuations, one could only rely on physical strength to resist. If one used a Fey to carry out an energy attack, the energy attack would be directly transmitted through the dimensional hub to the world on the other side of the dimensional hub. Not only did the Moon Empress not feel bad about Lin Yuan's behavior of hiding his strength, but she also abnormally admired it. The Moon Empress could not help but sigh in her heart. As expected of my disciple, just like me, he likes to hide his strength. The question and answer session lasted for the entire afternoon. After the question and answer session, everyone knew that Mystic Moon, who did not have a disciple, had prepared a sumptuous dinner. After dinner, the sun gradually set in the west. However, the halo of dusk was unusually gentle, elongating the shadows of Lin Yuan and Chu Xiai, who were strolling on the Leaning Moon Mountain. Lin Yuan was holding the dried fruits that he had picked on the Leaning Moon Mountain for Chu Xiai. The plants on the Leaning Moon Mountain were extremely lush, and the little fays that lived on the mountain could not finish eating the dried fruits that fell from the trees. Lin Yuan broke open a pine nut that was half the size of a palm and handed it to Chu Xiai. This fresh dried fruit has not been roasted. Although the fragrance is a little weaker, the fresh taste is even stronger. But really, is it okay for you to eat so many dried fruits just after dinner? Chu Xiai looked at the pine nut that was half the size of a palm and bounced with a smile. Lin Yuan, dried fruits don't take up any space in my stomach, do they? Although Chu Xiai said that, she used her other hand to rub her belly with satisfaction while eating the pine nut. The Leaning Moon Mountain was like spring all year round. The young lady's left shoulder was leaning against the youth beside her, and her right shoulder was reflecting the setting sun and the green grass. Every lively expression was like a beautiful oil painting that fused the feelings of a brother and sister. The young girl hopped like a fawn and took a step forward. She handed over the half-eaten pine nuts to Lin Yuan and said, "That's right. Big brother, I can't eat anymore." The youth turned around and glanced at the young lady's face. He helplessly stretched out his hand and gently stroked the corner of the young lady's mouth, wiping off a piece of pine nut crumb. Lin Yuan glanced at the pine nut in his hand, which was not even as big as the corner of Chu Xi's mouth, and said helplessly and dotingly, "I think I can't eat anymore. Even a black-backed mountain boar can't eat as much as you." The second one was even more delicious. I love you guys so much. Please get recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 538. After dinner, Song Yu immediately took a few spirit attendants to prepare Chu Si's residence on Leaning Moon Mountain. Chu Si was Song Yu's only disciple. Excluding her relationship with Lin Yuan, Chu Si was now considered a true core member of the Radiant Moon Palace. After some careful selection, Song Yu finally chose a pavilion beside the Radiant Moon Palace's riverside corridor for Chu Si. The pavilion was classic and could smell the fresh fragrance of plants all year round beside the stream flowing with grasswood spring water. This pavilion along the stream wasn't considered close to where Lin Yuan lived. The sun had set, and the sky had already turned dark blue. After Lin Yuan sent Chu Si back to the pavilion, he sat in the pavilion for a while. He found that the furnishings in the pavilion were indeed meticulously arranged by Song Yu. Although the furnishings in the riverside pavilion looked very elegant, it was in fact unusually luxurious. The vases and utensils on display were all made of celestial river stones. Under the illumination of the warm lights in the pavilion, these celestial river stone bottles rippled with a watercolored halo that was not inferior to the completely jade-textured wood. Moreover, celestial river stones contain yin water qi, which was extremely beneficial to a woman's skin. Not only that, but there was also a jade table made of celestial river jade in the pavilion's main hall. Lin Yuan felt that the celestial river jade table was a little familiar. Suddenly, he remembered that the celestial river jade table in Chu Si's room was Song Yu's favorite item in her residence. Now, Song Yu had put her favorite item in Chu Si's room when she was decorating it. Not to mention the celestial river jade table's value. Just by looking at Song Yu's intentions, it was enough to see how much she doted on Chu Si. After the various spirit fruits in the room were cleaned, they were placed on the elegantly shaped fruit plates made of sea sapphires. These spirit fruits had been picked not long ago, and the water vapor contained in the sea sapphires had a nourishing function. All of a sudden, these freshly picked spirit fruits were even fresher than before they were picked. However, Lin Yuan felt that this room was still lacking something. Suddenly Lin Yuan had an idea. He thought that he might as well put some of the black-back mountain boar ornaments, made of completely jade-textured wood. Chu Si should like it. After staying for a while, Lin Yuan prepared to go back. Before going back, he pressed down the hair on Chu Si's head again and said, "Rest early tonight. I'll pick you up early tomorrow morning, and we'll go back to the other home together." Lin Yuan looked at the dark circles under Chu Si's eyes, and could not help but feel a little heartache. She must have been worried about his safety, and had not had a good sleep. Chu Si should have been worried about his safety, and had not been able to have a good night. "Big brother, I'll watch the star web duels for another hour, and learn the timing for other defense-type spirit chi professionals to release shields in battle. After that, we'll have another 1.5 hours of star web duels on the star web tower, before going to sleep." Chu Si had a blissful smile on her face as she spoke. Although Chu Si hadn't said anything, she had been shocked again and again over the past 7 days. However, her thoughts were all on Lin Yuan, and she did not have the mind to care about other things. After Lin Yuan woke up, Chu Si recalled everything she had experienced in the past few days on the Leaning Moon Mountain with Song Yu, and felt like she was in a dream. Chu Si knew that Lin Yuan had a master. However, she did not expect her brother's master to be the Moon Empress, one of the Radiance Federation's 3 Class 5 creation masters. Aunt Song, who had always been caring for her, was also one of the Moon Empress Moon Envoys. Chu Si knew that Song Yu had returned to Redbud City to accompany her, because of Lin Yuan's master. Chu Si had never been curious about Song Yu's identity. Hence, after learning about her identity, apart from the initial shock, Chu Si did not think too much about it. Looking at the living environment in front of her, she felt that everything that had happened in the past few days was too unreal. After looking at Lin Yuan for a long time, Chu Si suddenly felt at ease. In her heart, as long as Lin Yuan was there would always be someone to hold up the sky and earth for her. This was not just a feeling of dependence, but a feeling of home wherever Lin Yuan was. For the first 15 years of Chu Si's life, it could be said that she had been relying on Lin Yuan ever since she could remember. They only had a small home, but now there were 2 big families, and it was really good to have Lin Yuan in both of them. Lin Yuan originally wanted to tell Chu Xi not to stay up late tonight, if she had not rested well before. However, he did not know how to say this. His sister was so hardworking, and still had to learn combat skills for an hour and a half at night. After learning combat skills, she still had to fight for another hour and a half to consolidate the knowledge she had learned. It could be said that she had made hard work a kind of life habit. As her brother, he should not object to such an outstanding habit. Lin Yuan could say that he would have plenty of opportunities to learn in the future, and was not in a hurry. However, in the process of growth, every step of the journey was under one's feet. With every small step taken, one could see further scenery. This kind of harvest that could only be obtained today could not be made up for tomorrow, no matter how much time was spent tomorrow. This was because this harvest only belonged to today, and not tomorrow. Lin Yuan was sincerely proud of Chu Xi in his heart. Moreover, he had just heard Chu Xi say that she wanted to learn the skill of setting up a shield. This was simply amazing. His sister was finally a mature iron bucket. She knew how to make herself harder. After leaving the riverside pavilion where Chu Xi lived, Lin Yuan planned to return to the pavilion where he lived. He had only woken up after being in a coma for 7 days. It was time to soak in the hot spring and clean himself up. Then at night, he would use his creation master identity to log on to Star Web and settle the things that should have been dealt with while he was unconscious, including the time he had been sucked into the dimensional rift to fight, and the time he had been unconscious. It had been almost 10 days. The group welfare that he had mentioned in the Purchase with No Lost Stores fan club was the auction of the 10 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. It should have started as early as 2 days ago. Due to his coma, Lin Yuan had logged on to Star Web 2 days late, which was equivalent to missing 2 days of the group welfare. Now that he had woken up, he naturally had to quickly auction off the 10 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls that the group welfare had mentioned. The first update. I'll definitely add an update tomorrow. There are a lot of things to do these 2 days. I'll definitely add an update. I'll definitely add an update for Zhan Wushuang. Amber button. Go. I learned it from Lin Yuan. There will be another update later. If everyone is sleepy, rest at this time. Moi. End of this chapter. Chapter 540. Pan Yu was angry in her heart, and Jin Qi happened to bump into the muzzle of the gun. Pan Yu glared at Jin Qi. She noticed that Jin Qi's lips were stained with melted black qiao when she was eating the black qiao. Pan Yu snorted. Your mouth is filthy. Then, he turned around and prepared to return to his residence and log into the Star Web to meet up with Jimei. Jin Qi really didn't understand. Didn't she just ask Jin Qi? What did you do just now? Why was his mouth full of filth? I didn't scold you. Jin Qi wasn't a pushover, but because she couldn't keep up with Pan Yu's pace, she couldn't immediately counterattack. He could only be alone in the wind. Lin Yuan happened to pass by Jin Qi and saw her messy appearance in the wind. Lin Yuan immediately remembered who this girl in front of him was. This girl was none other than the spirit attendant who had been with Wen Yu when her essence had been damaged. She had always been looking for trouble with Wen Yu. Upon seeing the girl standing there in a daze, Lin Yuan felt that he should explain to her. She said, your mouth is full of filth, because there is a lot of black powder on the corners of your mouth. Under the night sky, Lin Yuan felt that the black hair stuck to the corner of the girl's mouth looked like nose hair coming out of her nostrils. Jin Qi didn't expect that someone would suddenly speak up beside her. She subconsciously turned to look at the person who spoke. Jin Qi immediately bent down at the sight of it. Greetings, Lord Lin Yuan. Jin Qi might have had other thoughts about Lin Yuan in the past. At this moment, Jin Qi's fear of Lin Yuan was far more than her other thoughts. Who knew if Wen Yu had said anything bad about him, after being with Lin Yuan for such a long time? Lin Yuan had always had a bad impression of Jin Qi. It wasn't that what Jin Qi did was necessarily wrong. It was just that some people's hearts were like flowers and trees when they were moving forward, growing towards the sun. Some people's thoughts are like garlic growing in the shade. Compared to people who grew up in the shade, people who lived in the sun were undoubtedly more recognized by Lin Yuan. However, Even if he did not like Jin Qi, he would not do anything to her. Lin Yuan nodded at Jin Qi and walked toward the pavilion that he lived in. After seeing Lin Yuan walk far away, Jin Qi hurriedly let out a sigh of relief. Jin Qi realized that she was beside Lin Yuan at that moment, but Lin Yuan did not target her. Instead, he nodded at her. He had no intention of taking revenge for Wenyu. Jin Qi was somewhat enlightened. When Wenyu had returned to the Radiant Moon Palace, she had also seen her and nodded at her. He didn't do anything to her. Thinking of this, Jin Qi stood blankly in the dark. He felt that he had been too harsh towards Wenyu previously. Now that he thought about it, those harsh words really did seem a little repulsive. Jin Qi stood under the night sky for a long time, staring blankly at the crooked willow in front of her. Perhaps it was because it was the new year, but a new branch grew out of the crooked willow. On the crooked trunk of the willow, the new branch was trying its best to grow upwards. It was perfectly straight. After Lin Yuan returned to his pavilion, he opened the restriction on the hot spring in the pavilion. Immediately, the hot spring was filled with warm spring water. Lin Yuan was quietly soaking in the hot spring pool, enjoying the rare tranquility. Although his faction Sky City had just started, it already had a rough prototype. In terms of martial strength, he had the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, which were two Emperor-class experts. At present, it was enough to contend with the veteran factions. In terms of resources, Morbius' exclusive skill, Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, was a treasure trove that constantly produced resources. It was also the foundation of Lin Yuan's private faction Sky City. In terms of martial strength, Lin Yuan had never stopped recruiting people. He just wanted to recruit people like Zhou Luo, who had comprehended multiple willpower runes, with the current reputation of his purchase with no lost store. However, it was not easy to recruit king-class experts who did not have any powerful main phase. Finding Zhou Luo was like a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse. Moreover, apart from these king-class white-clothed servants who might be recruited, there were even higher bets on combat power. Given Lin Yuan's private faction's reputation, it was unlikely to recruit them. After all, Sky City had not shown anything that could attract pinnacle king-class experts. In fact, in Lin Yuan's opinion, running a private faction was different, and the most important support lay in the accumulation of resources. Lin Yuan felt that it was time for him to operate Sky City as a huge business machine. With commerce as the business model, he would swallow all kinds of resources. Lin Yuan now had his own pressure in the collection of resources. As the owner of Sky City, he had so many partners and subordinates. These people had offered their loyalty to him. So Lin Yuan had to think of a way to get these abundant resources. Not only that, but the two Earth phase, the floating island whale and the cloud crane, had yet to hatch. Every time the floating island whale absorbed the pure and huge spirit chi in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, it needed to consume the air-type and water-type heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. But to Lin Yuan, the real place to spend money was not on preparing to hatch the floating island whale in the crystal eggshell. Instead, it was how to raise the floating island whale after it hatched. If the floating island whale wanted to rise into the sky and become a behemoth that could carry a city, then the most basic requirement was to increase its grade to suzerain. The amount of resources consumed was something that even the true veteran forces could only look at and shrink back from. Lin Yuan had to think of a way to invest such a high amount of resources. In addition, the cloud crane was a spiritual type earth fae. If he wanted to increase its spiritual power and let it turn into clouds that could completely envelop the floating island whale, he would need to feed it enough spiritual type spiritual ingredients. The cloud crane needed to be fed with enough spiritual type spiritual ingredients. The cloud crane was not the only one that needed to consume spiritual type spiritual ingredients. Chu Ci was about to contract the fairy source type burning sunflower, Lu Jie's insect queen, and Wenyu's pain illusory fox. The growth of these spiritual type phase required the consumption of spiritual type spiritual ingredients. Among the spiritual ingredients in Lin Yuan's hands, spiritual type spiritual ingredients were the most lacking. At the same time, spiritual type spiritual ingredients were relatively rare among the various spiritual ingredients. Lin Yuan got up from the hot spring and went ashore. After wiping his body, he changed into a set of spirit chi clothes that Wen Yu had carefully designed. Even though Lin Yuan had ditched them twice, it was as if he had run away. While Bai was on the phone with Lu Jie, Lin Yuan had already asked Listen to help him inform the purchase with No Lost Stores fan club. Lin Yuan had already ditched them for 2 days, so he had to stick to the agreed time tonight. Baidu, read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Thus, as he looked on, he slowly discovered that the problem started from the fan group welfare of the purchase with No Lost Store. Slowly, it was all about his identity. This document also mentioned Black's name multiple times, and plenty of people were comparing their creation master status to Black's. Among them, Lin Yuan also saw Madman Zuan and Poison Beauty. Lin Yuan was a little stunned. Wasn't Madman Zuan the leader of Black's official fan club? And what about Poison Beauty? As a creation master, I don't even know Poison Beauty. Why is she standing on my side? With his meager strength, he was able to crazily compete with a large number of fans of his Black identity. Could it be because I used Black's identity to kill Poison Beauty twice during the Star Web Stairway duels? After Lin Yuan calmly browsed through it twice, he closed the document. His 2 identities were like left and right hands to him. What was there to compare? When Lin Yuan had chosen to separate these 2 identities, it was precisely because of the different abilities of the 2 identities. Therefore, Lin Yuan had decided to split these 2 identities into a creation master and a combat class spirit chi professional. He was afraid that a quarrel between his own fans on Starweb would only happen to him. At that moment, Listen sent another message. Young master, this matter is really a little strange. How should we deal with it? Lin Yuan looked at Listen and said the word strange. He felt that Listen must be holding back his laughter at this moment. Wasn't it strange for left and right to fight each other? However, Lin Yuan did not intend to ask about this matter. The key was that Lin Yuan did not know how to solve this matter. He could not possibly reveal his identity. Moreover, even if he revealed his identity, Don Rao's first reaction would definitely be to think that he was joking. Anyway, the group welfare auction could be carried out normally at 10 p.m. This storm regarding his purchase with No Lost Stores group welfare was over. After giving a few instructions to Listen, Lin Yuan went to visit the territory of the veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss. As an ordinary Star Web user, one look at the name of the veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss, and he knew that it was a faction that mainly nurtured aquatic phase. However, it was different from the spirit chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes that Lin Yuan wanted Sky City to create tailor-made high-quality bronze phase, according to the willpower rune they comprehended. The Aquarium of Bliss operated mainly by selling rare normal aquatic phase. However, most of these rare and normal aquatic phase were extremely delicate. In the past few decades, the veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss, had nurtured these rare and delicate phase in large quantities. They could already breed these rare aquatic phase on a large scale, which was very profitable. This time, Lin Yuan thought of the fae that the veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss, needed to trade. It was the Aquarium of Bliss's signature fae, the Angelfish of Bliss. During the growth process, the Angelfish of Bliss would completely shed all the scales on its body. After shedding, the scales would turn into a fish coat with 5 colors and sink to the bottom of the water. The fish coat produced by the Angelfish of Bliss was the best food for nurturing spiritual type phase. In fact, it was not that there were no other spiritual type spiritual ingredients that could replace the fish coat of the Angelfish of Bliss. It was just that most of the spiritual ingredients produced by other spiritual type phase were inseparable parts of the phase. In order to remove these spiritual ingredients, the spiritual type phase had to be killed. If Lin Yuan were to obtain spiritual ingredients like this, he did not know how many spiritual type phase he would need to nurture and kill. The advantage of the Angelfish of Bliss was that it could continue to develop like the Usneas. When the Angelfish of Bliss took off its fish coat, it was like a person cutting their nails. After a period of time, it would grow out again. Although it was very difficult to nurture the angelfish of bliss, it was not a problem for Lin Yuan. As long as he could have an outstanding angelfish of bliss, it would be fine. Lin Yuan used the Star Web's teleportation function to teleport to the veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss's private territory. He immediately read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 542. As soon as he entered the Aquarium of Bliss's private territory, Lin Yuan found that he seemed to have entered an underwater world rippling with light. Just the rippling blue light alone made the private territory of the Aquarium of Bliss, a veteran force, look rather extraordinary. After looking at the blue crystals embedded in the ground under his feet, Lin Yuan understood what was going on with the arrangement of the Aquarium of Bliss's private territory. It seemed that the Aquarium of Bliss had embedded a large amount of Milky River sand in the ground, and there should be some top-notch energy, ores containing a lot of spirit chi under the ground. Under the rendering of the spirit chi seeping out of the top-notch energy ores, the Milky River sand embedded in the ground would ripple with clear blue water light. However, Lin Yuan was used to seeing good things. He always felt that although this blue light had momentum, its color was slightly mixed and not smooth enough. In particular, Lin Yuan had just come out of the pavilion along the stream that Cold Moon had set up for Chu Ci. The clear blue rippling in the entire Aquarium of Bliss's private territory was not as clear as the clear blue water light in the small pavilion along the stream where Chu Ci lived. It could not be compared to the jade table, made of Milky River jade in the pavilion. Just compared to those bottles made of Milky River stone, the water light in front of him was much less clear. After all, Milky River sand was only a mineral wrapped on the surface of Milky River stone. However, just the large amount of Milky River sand used was not a small amount. After all, the Star Web's private territory was not small. It was already a very imposing thing to mix Milky River sand on the ground in such a large territory. Otherwise, if some places cut corners and added a little less Milky River sand, the rippling blue water light would not fuse together. If the blue water light could not fuse together, the Aquarium of Bliss's private territory would immediately lose the feeling of an underwater world. Lin Yuan sighed. If he had to spread so much Milky River sand on his private territory, he would not be able to afford it. If he did not sell the spiritual ingredients that represented his foundation, he would not be able to afford it. After all, he would not easily trade the source-type items he had hoarded, or the items on Suzerain/Myth Breed phase, especially the Essence Blood and Law crystals of Suzerain/Myth Breed phase. The Bronze/Legend Elemental Shellfish in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone constantly produced Heavenly Maiden-grade elemental pearls. He would not easily use them unless he traded for foundational spiritual ingredients in phase. After all, good steel must be spent on the blade. Fortunately, a new batch of completely jade-textured wood had matured during his long coma. These matured, completely jade-textured wood gave him a huge wave of pocket money. Before he could take a closer look at the other arrangements in the private territory of the Aquarium of Bliss, a veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss had arrived. A middle-aged man in a blue robe walked in front of him and sized him up from head to toe before speaking. If you want to trade aquatic phase here, you will first need to purchase an Immortal Bliss token. Each Immortal Bliss token will allow you to trade one aquatic fae from the Aquarium of Bliss. After saying that, the middle-aged man shook his hand and handed over a white fish plate sculpture that was dotted with specks of sky blue crystals. Lin Yuan took a look at the carving of the angelfish of bliss and looked at the fine bone patterns on the white surface of the carving. Lin Yuan immediately knew that this Immortal Bliss token's main material should be the fish bones of a kind of fish fae. The blue crystals embedded on the fish card were obviously of a higher quality than the Heavenly River sand on the ground. But from the looks of it, Landu wasn't at the level of a Skyriver stone. It was only a slightly better Skyriver sand. Lin Yuan secretly raised his brows and immediately understood that this fish card carving should be the business method of a veteran faction, the Aquarium of Bliss. This method of operation was exactly the same as the destiny letter he had envisioned. Not only could he show off his private force, But he could also use this method to absorb resources. When the blue-robed middle-aged man saw that Lin Yuan was looking at the Immortal Bliss card in his hand without making a sound, he coughed and said, "You're right. If you don't buy the Immortal Bliss token, you won't be qualified to enter." In the face of this situation, Lin Yuan blinked and felt slightly uncomfortable. Previously, he had always been harvesting other people's leaks. Now that he was trading in another veteran power's private territory, he had become the other party's leak. Lin Yuan asked as he looked at the fish carving with a little bit of Milky Way sand. "How much is one?" The blue-robed middle-aged man frowned and said, "This plate isn't called the fish plate, it's called the Immortal Bliss plate. This ordinary blissful immortal card is only 50,000 radiance dollars for one." The blue-robed man frowned, but it wasn't because Lin Yuan had called the Immortal Bliss card a fish card. Instead, someone had come to the Aquarium of Bliss to trade, and he didn't even know the price of the Immortal Bliss medallion, the proof of entry to the Aquarium of Bliss. The Aquarium of Bliss Star Web faction territory wasn't like the Fey Market, where one could casually stroll around. Most of the people who came had rare aquatic fays that they clearly wanted to trade. Anyone who entered the private territory of the Aquarium of Bliss with the purpose of sightseeing was also blacklisted by the Aquarium of Bliss. His authority would be set, and he would be kicked out of the Aquarium of Bliss private territory on Star Web. Furthermore, they would never be able to enter again. As a veteran force, the Aquarium of Bliss was qualified to be the owner of such an evil shop. This was the benefit of almost monopolizing a few rare aquatic fays. The blue-robed man muttered, "You'd better come here to trade, not to hang around." Then, he continued to patiently introduce, "Take the ordinary Immortal Bliss plate, and go inside to trade for fays. You won't be able to choose. You can only say the species, and our Aquarium of Bliss will help you choose." Of course, the Immortal Bliss plate is only a trading qualification. When you trade for specific aquatic fays, you still need to pay for specific aquatic fays. Due to the different qualifications of each aquatic fay, the price is also different. I have to remind you that even if you buy a lot of ordinary Immortal Bliss plates, you can still choose multiple fish fays. However, if you don't buy the last one that you didn't fancy, you won't be qualified to continue looking even if you have the Immortal Bliss plate. Upon hearing this, Lin Yuan frowned. This Immortal Bliss plate mixed with a little bit of Milky River sand was probably not as expensive as an item mixed with completely jade-textured wood powder. It could definitely be bought for 10,000 radiance dollars and below. It had to be known that 50,000 radiance dollars could completely buy a fish plate carving with Milky River jade fragments. Of course, Lin Yuan didn't care about this. Anyway, buying the Immortal Bliss plate was equivalent to buying a ticket. However, not being able to choose for himself was simply too much of a scam. End of this chapter. Chapter 543. The Aquarium of Bliss was truly a goddamn genius. They had actually completed the Fey transaction as a fortune bag. Isn't this the same as saying that even if you spend money to buy my fish fays, if you don't buy enough, you won't be able to buy good quality. If you want good quality, you have to pack up all the stuff you don't need. With this, the Aquarium of Bliss wouldn't have to worry about sales anymore. In fact, he didn't even have to bear the loss of some fays with poor aptitudes, and could be distributed for others to pack up. This was simply too vicious. Lin Yuan wanted to purchase the Angelfish of Bliss, so that it could produce a spiritual-type fish coat. At the very least, he had to raise the Angelfish of Bliss to epic grade. If it was a young Angelfish of Bliss, then Lin Yuan's efforts would have been in vain. Lin Yuan felt that he couldn't possibly buy dozens of ordinary Immortal Bliss cards that were mixed with the Milky Way sand, and prepare to buy a large number of substandard Angelfish of Bliss before entering the fish gambling hall. When the blue-robed man was talking about the Immortal Bliss card, he had emphasized the word ordinary. That meant that the Immortal Bliss token, which served as an entrance ticket, had an even more advanced existence. I wonder if there are any unusual Immortal Bliss tokens? Upon hearing that, the blue-robed man flipped his hand and took out a slightly larger Immortal Bliss card. He saw that the bigger Immortal Bliss token had blue dots on it, and it was much more transparent than the smaller Immortal Bliss token. At a glance, Lin Yuan knew that the larger Immortal Bliss card had been mixed with milky riverstone fragments. Lin Yuan only heard the blue-robed man say, "Anyone who buys this high-grade Immortal Bliss tablet will become an honored guest of my Aquarium of Bliss." The price of a high-grade Immortal Bliss card is only 200,000 Radiance dollars, but you can enjoy two privileges compared to buying an ordinary Immortal Bliss card that costs 50,000 Radiance dollars. The first privilege is that after you enter, our staff will give you 100 fish phase of your designated species. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up after hearing the blue-robed man's words. Although the price of a high-grade Immortal Bliss token was equivalent to the price of 4 ordinary Immortal Bliss tokens, one could see 100 angelfish of bliss in one go. That was equivalent to spending 4 times the price to enjoy 100 times the happiness. This was just the first privilege, and it was already so awesome. Lin Yuan could not help but start to look forward to the second privilege. Lin Yuan heard the blue-robed man speak again. The second privilege is that you can choose to give up these 100 designated fish phase in exchange for a new batch. Before Lin Yuan could have the thought of spending 4 times the price and experiencing 200 times the happiness, Lin Yuan felt that something was wrong. The man in the blue robe cleared his throat and reminded, "Of course, in addition to the special privileges, you also have to pay attention to the fact that the Advanced Immortal Bliss card's fish selection method is to buy all 100 fish from the designated batch at once, not just a few of them. But if there are no accidents, there will be some decent ones among these 100 listening phase. Most people who come to the Aquarium of Bliss for the second time won't choose a normal Immortal Bliss tablet. They will all choose a high-grade Immortal Bliss tablet." Upon hearing the blue-robed man's words, Lin Yuan's previous feeling of spending money to experience happiness completely vanished. At the end of the day, this high-grade Immortal Bliss token was equivalent to buying a large fortune bag. It was just that he could spend less of the ordinary Immortal Bliss token as a bargaining chip. However, the prerequisite for saving on the price of the ordinary Immortal Bliss token was to buy 100 angelfish of different qualities in one go. Who could withstand that? Moreover, from the blue-robed man's words, if there are no accidents, there will be some decent ones, and all people who come to the Aquarium of Bliss for the second time will choose a high-grade Immortal Bliss token. It was obvious how difficult it was to find an angelfish of bliss with excellent qualities. Probably only 1 or 2 of them would be of high quality out of hundreds of them. Lin Yuan wanted more than 1 or 2 angelfish of bliss with high qualities. A long time ago, Hu Quan had discussed with Lin Yuan about expanding the mansion's artificial lake. They would then use winding corridors and pavilions to encircle a water garden. Lin Yuan planned to rear some angelfish of bliss in the water under the water garden. The angelfish of bliss was very good-looking, even though they were not selected as the top 10 most beautiful phase like the blue flash butterfly. However, they would still be able to enter the top 100. It was simply killing 2 birds with 1 stone to rear some angelfish of bliss in the mansion's artificial lake. It could also produce spiritual ingredients to nurture spiritual type phase. Given Lin Yuan's huge needs, he felt that no matter how thick his leek was, it would not be enough for the Aquarium of Bliss to harvest. Lin Yuan had chosen to buy angelfish of bliss from the Aquarium of Bliss because of convenience. Although angelfish of bliss were very delicate and rare, and the Aquarium of Bliss was named after them. However, angelfish of bliss were not unique to the Aquarium of Bliss. Lin Yuan had previously carefully checked some information about angelfish of bliss. The Aquarium of Bliss's supreme great angelfish of bliss shed their fish coats, which were far inferior to those that were naturally bred. However, after the Aquarium of Bliss improved the angelfish of bliss, they could breed in large numbers, and over time, they became their signature. At the end of the day, Lin Yuan was too lazy to post trades in his purchase with no loss store, and buy them one by one. After seeing the Aquarium of Bliss's trap, Lin Yuan had wanted to leave. However, he immediately felt that since he was here, he might as well buy 2 high-grade angelfish of bliss cards, and go in to choose 2 batches to see his luck. Even if the harvest was not good, He would buy these 200 angelfish of bliss, upgrade their quality to bronze/flawless, and then sell them. He would still be able to make a profit. He would not let them rot in his hands for no reason. Therefore, Lin Yuan said to the blue-robed man, "Give me 2 high-grade immortal bliss cards then." The blue-robed man flipped his hand and took out another high-grade immortal bliss card. The blue-robed man flipped his hand and took out another high-grade immortal bliss card. He took out the new high-grade immortal bliss token and handed it to Lin Yuan along with the one he already had. 2 high-grade immortal bliss cards for 400,000 radiance dollars. Transfer them to me directly. 2 high-grade immortal bliss cards. You'll definitely have a harvest. Lin Yuan found that the blue-robed man always liked to chew on words when he spoke. After Lin Yuan asked for 2 high-grade immortal bliss cards, the blue-robed man changed his words from almost to definitely. Lin Yuan vaguely guessed that the Aquarium of Bliss's Angelfish of Bliss would only have 1 high-grade existence out of every 200. The second one was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 544. Just as Lin Yuan was about to transfer 400,000 radiance dollars, he heard the blue-robed man speak. The private territory of the Aquarium of Bliss only receives 10 customers at a time. You're currently the 27th in line, so you'll have to wait for a while. As soon as Lin Yuan heard that, he was not in a hurry to pay 400,000 radiance dollars. Instead, he looked at the time. Lin Yuan realized that there were only 40 minutes left before the group welfare auction at 10 p.m. How long do I have to wait to be ranked 17th? The blue-robed man's eyes widened when he heard this. He felt as if he had seen through this young man wearing a strange mask. What's the matter? Are you in a hurry to trade with the Aquarium of Bliss? The blue-robed man thought. No matter what reason this brat came up with, as long as he didn't buy the 2 high-grade immortal blissful tokens, he was just toying with her. Asking this and that, he had been talking for a long time. The blue-robed man had already made up his mind. As long as the masked youth in front of him did not pay up, he would kick him out. The blue-robed man said with a fake smile. 2 hours at the earliest. It's already considered short for you to wait for only 2 hours. If you're unlucky, there are many people who come at noon and wait until the next morning. As soon as Lin Yuan heard that, he knew that he couldn't buy it now. I still have some time. Since I have to wait for 2 hours, I'll buy these 2 after I'm done. Before he could finish speaking, he found himself teleported back to the purchase with no loss store by Star Web. According to the information on the Star Web, he was suddenly kicked out of the private territory of the Aquarium of Bliss by the blue-robed man. Furthermore, he was blacklisted never to enter again. Lin Yuan couldn't help but have a head full of black money. Even if Lin Yuan had a good temper, he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. What the hell is this? Isn't the Aquarium of Bliss a little too overbearing? Aren't you afraid of suffering losses? Previously, Lin Yuan had nothing to do with the Aquarium of Bliss, a veteran faction. However, the Aquarium of Bliss had been invisibly added to his blacklist. He was kicked out of the Aquarium of Bliss private territory by the blue-robed man. Even if he did not want to go through the trouble of posting an exchange in the purchase with no loss store, there were other ways. The Angelfish of Bliss was an aquatic fae that could live in both seawater and freshwater, but it appeared more frequently in the ocean. Presumably, the Gao family was a rich and powerful family that focused on developing marine resources in the sea. After all, the Gao family was a top force that could even trade the elemental shellfish and the floating island whale. There were still a few more days before the New Year's Day, and Lin Yuan did not wish to trouble Gao Feng before the New Year's Day. Otherwise, he would have just given Gao Feng a call, and this matter would have been settled. On the other side, the blue-robed man suddenly felt that he had been too impulsive. He really shouldn't have kicked him out just like that. He should be scolded and kicked. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste of time to say goodbye? The blue-robed man counted with his fingers. He had already lost count of the number of people who came to watch the show, but did not buy anything today. He placed another 10 pots of flower brocade pearls in his purchase with no loss store. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to use the blind trade method to exchange for the mid-grade strange flames this time. Instead, he changed it to a spiritual material called aurora pollen. Lin Yuan simply had too many mid-grade strange flames, and he would not be able to use them all in a short time. There was no benefit in hoarding spirit materials like mid-grade strange flames. To Lin Yuan, the mid-grade strange flames were only used to promote Chinese quality. As for the aurora pollen, it was the best food to feed the angelfish of bliss. The aurora pollen could rapidly let the angelfish of bliss grow scales and take off the fish coat on its body. Moreover, the aurora pollen could make the delicate angelfish of bliss even more tenacious. The exclusive skill, place of life, of the 3 Mountain River eternal life carps in Lin Yuan's manor was enough to protect the delicate angelfish of bliss. However, in order to let the angelfish of bliss produce the best fish coat, feeding it aurora pollen was definitely the right thing to do. The aurora pollen was the powder on the stamens of the aurora morning glory's bud. If Lin Yuan nurtured the aurora morning glory, he could also collect the aurora pollen. However, compared to the delicate angelfish of bliss, the aurora morning glory was simply unreasonable and torturous. Someone had to constantly scrape the pollen off the aurora morning glory stamens for the stamens to secrete more aurora pollen. Lin Yuan wasn't interested in personally nurturing such a torturous fae. It wasn't that Lin Yuan didn't think of using the brocade lotus pearl to exchange for the angelfish of bliss. However, the price of the wild angelfish of bliss and the golden lotus pearl wasn't equal. If someone used the angelfish of bliss bred by the aquarium of bliss to exchange, Lin Yuan wouldn't want to accept it either. After setting up the blind trade, Lin Yuan sat there leisurely. He was prepared to quietly wait for the group welfare auction to begin and see what the group members were talking about during this period of time. He opened the group chat and saw the 9,999 plus messages in his purchase with No Lost Stores fan club. Lin Yuan couldn't help but complain. Are my group members' mouths made of machine guns? However, after Lin Yuan opened the group chat and scrolled through the chat history, he knew how the dozens of people in the group had flooded the 9,999 plus messages. It seemed like the only thing that could defeat a machine gun was a repeater. Nearly half of the messages were repeats and some strange emojis. Lin Yuan felt that even if he starved to death, he wouldn't be able to finish scrolling through and see what other useful things the group members said. However, the messages in the group jumped very quickly. While waiting, Lin Yuan didn't feel bored. He quietly opened the group chat and looked at the chat of the purchase with No Lost Stores fan club. With one look, Lin Yuan's attention was attracted by the words of a group member called Recluse Study. Recluse Study. Is there a treasure living in Indigo Azure City in the group? I have a cantaloupe here. It's fragrant and sweet, and it's enough to eat. Lin Yuan had been unconscious in the dimensional rift outside Indigo Azure City, and had just woken up today. He couldn't help but be curious about what kind of cantaloupe had appeared in Indigo Azure City. There were only a few people in the purchase with No Lost Store. Every time someone sold melons, a group of people would always gather around. Time. What else can there be during this period of time? It's just some news about the dimensional rift opening. Regional sleeping god. Indigo Azure City is near the sea. Could a class 4 dimensional rift have appeared? Jaw. Eat melons in the front row. If the melon isn't sweet, offer your head. Recluse Study. You're supporting my body, but my melon is absolutely fragrant and sweet enough. Top secret news. I heard that some time ago, the bright moon in the sky was related to a young man. Add updates for unparalleled in the world. Sob for several days. First, I'll make up for one more update, then another update. Seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 545. After seeing the message sent by Recluse Study in the purchase with No Lost Stores fan club, Lin Yuan's eyes immediately narrowed. The purchase with No Lost Stores fan club, which was usually very active, immediately went into an uproar after seeing Recluse Study's message. Red Spider Lily Bloom. Brother, you can even eat this kind of melon? You're quite capable. Qi Zhongling. Brother, I just want to ask if this melon is real? Or did you type the words bright moon hanging high wrongly? Recluse Study seemed to have expected that ordinary people would find it hard to believe his melon. However, Recluse Study didn't explain his previous actions. Instead he said, "You're right." Instead he said, "I'm not very capable, and I'm not from a big family. However, my uncle is a very powerful freelance spirit chi professional." Recluse Study. My uncle saw it with his own eyes, so it naturally can't be wrong. As soon as Recluse Study said that, even though many people still said they did not believe it, they started to inquire about it indirectly. Lin Yuan's purchase with No Lost Stores fan club only had the first batch of members. They had joined by snatching usnias and spirit siphon goldfish at the beginning. However, there were not many people in the first batch. Even after Lin Yuan removed the usnias and spirit siphon goldfish from the shelves, they did not increase much. Due to the strict defense of these members who had entered the fan club earlier, they were so stable that they went to wait for Lin Yuan's new usnias and spirit siphon goldfish in the Star Web store almost all day. This caused the usnias and spirit siphon goldfish to be almost monopolized by these people in the fan club. This made it harder and harder for newcomers to join the Star Web Store's fan club by snatching usnias and spirit siphon goldfish. Especially after Lin Yuan used the flower brocade pearls to carry out a blind trade. The number of people with status and resources in the purchase with No Lost Stores fan club had increased significantly. Recluse Study had recently used a large number of mid-grade strange flames to exchange for the flower brocade pearls. Since a wealthy person like Recluse Study dared to say that his family had seen it with their own eyes. Even if this melon was not necessarily accurate, it was most likely true. 9 days ago, the bright moon hung high, and the moonlight was dyed with blood. The bright moon covered the sun that should have existed in the world. Perhaps many ordinary people did not know what was going on when the world changed its color. However, anyone with a bit of knowledge would associate it with the supreme moon, which no one dared to talk about easily. That was why Recluse Study's words had attracted the attention of almost everyone in the group. At that moment, a member of the group called Sleeping Addiction asked Recluse Study a question that everyone else had been wanting to ask. Sleeping Addiction. Brother, you said that the moon is related to a young man. Who is this young man? Recluse Study replied immediately. Recluse Study. I heard from my uncle that they might be master and disciple. As soon as Recluse Study sent this message, Addiction to Sleep replied below. Sleeping Addiction. I envy this young man. Immediately after, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and immediately saw a series of I envy this young man's notifications. After a while, there were more than 80 messages in the group. Lin Yuan originally wanted to have a taste of Indigo Azure City's melons while he was unconscious. But why did it seem like he was the one who ate the melon instead? Lin Yuan did not know anything about what had happened in the real world after he had been sucked into the evolving dimensional rift. Now he saw Recluse Study constantly posting melons related to him. Lin Yuan stared blankly like a melon-eating youth. As the person involved, Lin Yuan did not know how true Recluse Study's melon was. However, this melon was quite sweet. From Recluse Study's melon, Lin Yuan could feel how nervous his master, the Moon Empress, had been after knowing that he had been sucked into the evolving dimensional rift. It was an emotion that the person involved could not feel, but hearing it from other people's mouths would always make him feel touched. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Recluse Study send another message in the group chat. Recluse Study. I heard from my uncle that this matter seems to involve Indigo Azure City's Zheng family. Recluse Study. Don't spread this matter about the Zheng family, because I secretly heard it from my uncle and mother. After sending this message, Recluse Study's concerns did not happen at all. Because Reclusive Study was directly judged by a few big shots in the group as a fake message, they cast him with disdain. In the eyes of the masses, even if the Zheng family was related to the young man that Recluse Study claimed to be the Moon Empress disciple, they would not be able to do anything about it. The Zheng family definitely did not have the qualifications to make the moonlight cover the blazing sun and stand alone in the sky because of the Zheng family. Lin Yuan could not help but be a little curious. Who was this uncle that Recluse Study mentioned? Recluse Study knew a little too much, and when he heard Recluse Study mention the Zheng family, Lin Yuan was stunned. Recluse Study knew a little too much, and when he heard Recluse Study mention the Zheng family, Lin Yuan was sure that Recluse Study's melon was real. The storm between him and the Zheng family was first, and then he had been sucked into the evolving dimensional rift. Nothing had happened for nearly 2 days in between. At that time, he had indeed revealed his identity to the 2 guard envoys, with his master's creation master crest with the Moon Empress imprint. However, the 2 guard envoys had already promised him that they would not let this matter spread. As for the Indigo Azure Guard captain, since the 2 guard envoys had come with him, they would naturally remind him. There were only 3 people left who might be Recluse Study's uncle. One was Jiao Hansong. The other was Duan He, who had come with Jiao Hansong to help protect him and help his contracted fae, the Cold Snow Pine, break through to Myth 2 and transform into a human. There was also Nightmare 6, who had suddenly appeared to support Jiao Hansong. However, Jiao Hansong and Nightmare 6 were already dead, and the dead would not speak. In that case, only Duan He would be able to completely understand all of this. In any case, such news could not have been spread by the Zheng family itself. Lin Yuan did not deny the possibility of this matter being leaked, but he could tell from the reactions of the others in the group that they did not know about this at all. Moreover, when he had called Lu Jie this morning, when you had also mentioned the Zheng family's current situation, it was obvious that his master, the Moon Empress, had not done anything to the Zheng family. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that some things could be discovered as long as he thought about it. However, Lin Yuan could not be sure if his guess was completely accurate. If he wanted to verify his guess, he still had to test it out. The first watch, and there was another watch later. End of this chapter. Chapter 546. Just as the group members were denouncing Recluse Study's behavior of adding more melons, Lin Yuan spoke up. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. Looking at the time, the group welfare auction will start in 10 minutes. Lin Yuan's appearance helped Recluse Study out of the predicament. Soon, Lin Yuan once again saw the power of the purchase with No Lost Stores Star Web Fan Club card repeater. After looking at the row after row of Pigeon Group owner has spoken up messages, Lin Yuan felt that it was time for him to take out some compensation. The more Lin Yuan compensated, the more he would earn. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. Since I was delayed for 2 days due to some matters, the group welfare will compensate you guys by giving you 2 more Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. Lin Yuan's compensation immediately received a warm response from the group members. Your little fairy is here with me. The group owner is awesome. Old Black Crow. Goo goo, 2 more Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls after 2 days. The group owner is simply too particular. Amber Button. Although the group owner added 2 more, I still can't afford it. I'm watching the big boss trade in the front row. Upon seeing the enthusiastic response from the group members, Lin Yuan felt a little embarrassed. He felt a little embarrassed that he had delayed the group welfare auction because of some matters in the past 2 days. Lin Yuan thought about it and continued to edit another message. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. The 10 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls I took out previously had a purity of around 9.8. This time, I will take back the 10 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls with a purity of around 9.8. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. Instead, I will carefully pick out 12 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls with a purity of 9.9. I will not specify the attributes of these 12 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. The person who wins the auction can choose the attributes of the Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls from the 4 elements of water, wind, earth, or fire. After Lin Yuan sent this message, the eyelids of the creation masters in the group twitched violently. The ones who jumped the most were the 2 Class 4 creation masters who joined the purchase with No Lost Stores fan club. Only Class 4 creation masters would know how difficult it was to nurture a Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearl with a purity of 9.9, just as Lin Yuan mentioned the 9.8 purity Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. Many people in the group realized that the Heavenly Maiden Grade Fire Elemental Pearls, that the group leader had taken out earlier were of such high purity. Now he had changed the 8 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls into 9 purity ones. Apart from being shocked by Lin Yuan's generosity, many people who had been preparing to auction the heavenly maiden great elemental pearls had no choice but to re-examine their chips. This was because the 8 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls and the 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls were sold as high purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls. In terms of use, it was not much different from the 5 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls. However, 9 heavenly maiden great elemental pearls were rare treasures when it came to collecting. Class 4 Creation Master Duan Li was also reading the group chat. Master Duan Li had helped Zhou Luo cultivate the ironbone lizard before, so she knew that it required 5 heavenly maiden great elemental pearls to evolve. It had evolved from an earth-type Fey into an earth-fire dual-type Fey. He had previously seen Zhou Luo in the purchase with no loss store, and heard from him that the ironbone splitting lizard was fine. Master Duan Li had already raised the importance of the purchase with no loss store by a whole new level in her heart. When Lin Yuan decided to auction off the 10 heavenly maiden great elemental pearls as group welfare, Master Duan Li's opinion of the purchase with no loss store rose once again. Now Lin Yuan was offering 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls as group welfare as compensation for postponing the group welfare auction. Master Duan Li suddenly felt that this small star web store had already surpassed many veteran factions in terms of grandeur. It had reached the level of a top-notch faction. In Master Duan Li's eyes, offering 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls for auction was a huge loss. It was a real benefit to the group. As a Class 4 Creation Master, Master Duan Li rarely spoke in the group, but now, she could not help but ask, Duan Li, Admin Water, Wind, Fire and Earth, can you guarantee a 9 purity no matter which element you choose? Master Duan Li's question echoed the question in the hearts of almost all the group members. Lin Yuan looked at Master Duan Li's question and replied seriously, Deep Mountain Elder Lin, since it's a benefit, it has to be treated equally. So, no matter which element you choose, or just one of the 4, I can guarantee a 9 purity. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. That way, you guys won't have to go through the trouble of exchanging for elemental pearls that don't match. Seeing Lin Yuan's reply, almost everyone in the group had the same thought. That was why the admin's reply seemed so serious. But no matter how you looked at it, it seemed like he was showing off and showing off. If one could really obtain 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls, only an idiot would choose to trade. When the heavenly maiden great elemental pearls reached 9 purity, the surface of the elemental pearls would form a layer of pearls. This layer of pearls had the softness of pearls and the luster of the elemental essence. Apart from the elemental pearls themselves, they were also an extremely rare collectible. Every single heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl with a 9 purity would form a different layer of pearls. It could be said that every single heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl with a 9 purity was a unique existence in this world. This meant that the exchange of 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls was no longer an equivalent exchange. It was more like an exchange between two collectibles. The Class 4 Creation Master Duan Li took a deep breath. From Lin Yuan's words, she could tell that Lin Yuan had a lot of 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls. At the very least, he could take out 12 of each. Originally, Master Duan Li had been more rational about the appearance of heavenly maiden great elemental pearls. But now, after seeing the 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls, Master Duan Li felt that she had to take a gamble. She wanted to see if she could buy these 9 purity heavenly maiden great elemental pearls. Master Duan Li was already hesitating about whether she should take out the treasure that she had been hiding and unwilling to use in exchange. After Lin Yuan announced his newly changed group benefits, he saw everyone's intense reactions, especially when he saw the members of the group called Recluse Study, who looked eager to give it a try. Lin Yuan tagged Recluse Study in the group chat. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. Recluse Study, is your uncle's surname Duan? Lin Yuan's nonsensical words immediately caused the crowd to flood the screen with. However, Recluse Study quickly jumped up and asked in astonishment. Recluse Study, fuck. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, have you been a charlatan for the past 2 days? Seeing Recluse Study's reaction, Lin Yuan knew that he had guessed correctly. Recluse Study's uncle was indeed Duan He. Lin Yuan watched as Recluse Study frantically tagged him in the group chat and asked how he knew. The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up, but he did not answer Recluse Study's question. This was because Lin Yuan was already scheming against Recluse Study's uncle, Duan He. Second, even more, seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 547. Lin Yuan remembered that Recluse Study had said in the group chat that he was not a member of a major family clan, and that his uncle Duan He was also a freelance spirit chi professional. His identity as a freelance spirit chi professional meant that Duan He had not joined any faction. Duan He had initially wanted to help Jiao Hansong's Fae survive the world cleansing. However, based on the interaction between Duan He and Jiao Hansong, Lin Yuan knew that Duan He did not have any personal relationship with the Zheng family. He had come to the deserted island just to return Jiao Hansong's favor. Lin Yuan's current private faction, Sky City, only had Endless Summer and the Mother of Bloodbath. Although Lin Yuan had not seen Duan He's true strength and had only seen his Diamond X/Fantasy V Sword Plume Sea Eagle, Duan He's Sword Plume Sea Eagle, Lin Yuan had not seen it. However, Jiao Hansong could find Duan He to help his myth breed Fae survive the world cleansing. This meant that Duan He's main Fae was at least at the pinnacle of myth I. Lin Yuan secretly thought that if he could rope in Recluse Study's uncle and obtain Duan He's loyalty, that would undoubtedly increase the strength of Sky City's high-end combat power by a lot. While Lin Yuan was thinking about Duan He was also secretly thinking about his own advantages. If he could recruit the Emperor-class expert, Duan He, under his command, what exactly could he bring to Duan He? Recruiting an Emperor-class expert as a subordinate was not something that could be achieved by just casually paying some rare resources. For things like bronze/epic phase, Emperor-class experts could easily use their connections and resources to find Class 4 creation masters to purchase or customize. With an Emperor-class expert status, very few Class 4 creation masters would reject a transaction with an Emperor-class expert. Emperor-class experts could definitely be regarded as core combat power for veteran factions. As long as they were willing to pledge their loyalty, any veteran faction would not be stingy with their resources. Therefore, if Lin Yuan wanted to target Duan He and make him his subordinate, he would need to put in a lot of effort. However, Lin Yuan also had something that other veteran factions and top factions could not offer. That was a bronze/legend Fae. Of course, Lin Yuan only had the thought of recruiting Duan He at the moment. Duan He was indeed an Emperor-class expert, but Lin Yuan had never only looked at strength when recruiting subordinates. On the basis of strength, Lin Yuan also valued the character of his subordinates. Lin Yuan was not clear about Duan He's character. Lin Yuan was tempted. As for whether he should get in touch with Duan He would need to get Wen Yu to check on Duan He's relevant deeds and information. In the Radiant Moon Palace's Hidden Moon Pavilion, every expert's information had been analyzed by the Radiant Moon Palace's hidden servants. The personalities and life experiences of these experts had been organized into distinct biographies. As the incident happened, the Radiant Moon Palace's hidden servants would update and record it in the character journal. After the death of every expert who was qualified to be written in the Radiant Moon Palace's annals by the hidden servant, this name was engraved with this expert's entire character's will and would be sealed. His faction, Sky City, had sorted out all the information on the veteran and rising factions in a very short time according to its own situation. In addition to Wen Yu's hard work, a large part of the reason was the ready-made information in the Radiant Moon Palace's Hidden Moon Pavilion. The Radiant Moon Palace's Hidden Moon Pavilion was an intelligence organization that belonged to the Moon Empress and was usually controlled by Mystic Moon. To outsiders, the Leaning Moon Mountain was a forbidden place that could not be set foot in, let alone the Hidden Moon Pavilion, which was the Radiant Moon Palace's eyes. However, to Lin Yuan, entering the Hidden Moon Pavilion was as simple as entering the pavilion that he lived in on the Leaning Moon Mountain. Lin Yuan's hand gently pinched his chin as he pondered. In order to attract an Emperor-class expert to join a faction, apart from providing resources, what could attract the Emperor-class expert's attention was a beautiful future. Lin Yuan had always insisted on relying on his own ability to develop Sky City, but he was not pedantic on some things. The Moon Empress had proposed to Lin Yuan several times that she wanted to pour resources into Sky City, but he had rejected them without hesitation. However, the fact that the Moon Empress was his master was an unchanging fact. Although Lin Yuan did not accept the Moon Empress's pouring of external resources, he did not completely rely on his own strength to collect information and intelligence. Instead, he relied on the Radiant Moon Palace's Hidden Moon Pavilion's information network to establish his private faction Sky City. In Lin Yuan's opinion, information and intelligence were far more useful than resources. When you had already sorted out all the resources that Sky City had for the major emerging factions and veteran factions, next, Lin Yuan needed to start building his own eyes for Sky City. He would not always treat the Hidden Moon Pavilion as Sky City's eyes. If it were other Emperor-class experts, given Lin Yuan's current standards, he might not think of recruiting them. However, Duan He was an exception. This was because Duan He was different from other Emperor-class experts, in that Duan He knew Lin Yuan's identity. Lin Yuan knew that he had abundant resources on hand and could completely meet Duan He's needs. Exposing his identity to Duan He was equivalent to giving Duan He a beautiful future. Therefore, under the premise that Lin Yuan did not want to expose his identity to the outside world, recruiting the Emperor-class expert, Duan He, was Lin Yuan's best choice. During the few minutes that Lin Yuan pondered, everyone had already forgotten that he had guessed Recluse Study's uncle's surname like a charlatan. Everyone's mind was already on the 12 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls with 9 purity. However, Recluse Study still felt that it was a little unbelievable. Since he did not get an answer from Lin Yuan, Recluse Study took it to heart. There were so many big shots in the group, but the group owner did not seem to know anyone. Recluse Study did not think that the group owner would know him. However, at the thought of his uncle's formidable strength, Recluse Study suddenly came to a realization. The group owner wouldn't know my uncle, right? Recluse Study suddenly remembered that this purchase with no Lost Star web store seemed to be recommended to him by his uncle, knowing that he wanted to buy the flower brocade pearls. However, after Recluse Study exchanged for the flower brocade pearls through blind trading and joined the fan group. However, he did not find his uncle in the fan group. At that moment, Recluse Study realized that his uncle was online on Star Web. Since he could not get an answer from Lin Yuan, Recluse Study thought that he would get an answer from his uncle. Thus, he decided to go into seclusion and sent a message over. First later. End of this chapter. Chapter 548. Recluse Study. Uncle, do you still remember the Star Web boutique store that you recommended me to buy flower brocade pearls from? Duan He had yet to leave Indigo Azure City. Instead, he was helping the 2 guard envoys kill some high-level water world dimensional life forms, while the dimensional rift was active. At the same time, he also entered the various dimensional rifts to scavenge source-type items to earn resources. Even if Duan He was an Emperor Realm expert with extraordinary strength, he would not be able to defeat Duan He. However, during the active phase of the dimensional rifts could appear everywhere. Duan He still felt abnormally tired from having to frequently traverse between dimensional rifts to kill high-grade dimensional life forms. Part of the reason why Duan He was working so hard was because this dimensional rift was active, and the degree of spatial fluctuations was far greater than the previous ones. Even though the two guard envoys had brought close to 1,000 spirit guards to coordinate with the Indigo Azure Guards in Indigo Azure City, they were still lacking in manpower. Secondly, it was also because Duan He was really short on resources during this period of time. This shortage of resources had already brought a lot of pressure to Duan He. Duan He was probably the only person who hated Jiao Hansong the most right now. During the process of Jiao Hansong's main Fey, the Cold Snow Pine, evolving to Myth 2, he had borrowed a few expensive spiritual ingredients from Duan He. At that time, Jiao Hansong had given Duan He a relatively good return price, and had shamelessly told Duan He many times. Only then was Duan He willing to lend it to Jiao Hansong. But Duan He had never imagined that Jiao Hansong, this old bag of bones, would actually die. Duan He really didn't know who to look for to collect the debt. He couldn't possibly go to the Zheng family to collect it, right? Not to mention whether or not the Zheng clan would repay the debt. The Zheng clan had lost 2 emperor-level experts. If he went to find the Zheng family at this time, he would probably become a ready-made punching bag for the Zheng family. At that time, not only would he not be able to retrieve the precious Fey that he had lent out, but he would also have to suffer the dust. Duan He's talent was quite strong. Apart from the Diamond X/Fantasy V Sword Plume Sea Eagle, there were 2 other Feys. Both of Duan He's Feys were main Feys, and had reached the pinnacle of Suzerain/Myth I. He was just 1 step away from reaching Myth 2. Duan He did not have the slightest clue about the money needed to upgrade his 2 main Feys from Suzerain/Myth I to Myth 2. Coincidentally, a few days ago, Duan He had comprehended another willpower rune under the moonlight. Duan He's spiritual energy could still be used to contract Feys. Comprehending 1 more willpower rune was the same as needing to contract a new high-quality bronze Fey. Furthermore, he would nurture this new high-quality bronze Fey. This was supposed to be a joyous occasion. This was what Duan He had been looking forward to for the past few years. 1 more Fey would enrich Duan He's current combat system. It allowed Duan He to have more possibilities. However, this joyous occasion came at the juncture where his 2 main Feys were about to advance to Myth 2. So it seemed a little awkward. The fulfillment of this happy event, that he had been looking forward to a few years ago, did not make Duan He feel happy. Instead, he felt as if the milk had returned after the baby had died. Duan He, who wasn't in a good mood, looked at his nephew, who had become a creation master at a young age, but had been obsessed with star web battles, and had yet to become a Class 2 creation master. He felt that he could not vent his anger. In Duan He's opinion, what was the use of combat class spirit chi professionals risking their lives every day? No matter how strong they were, weren't they still working for those creation masters? In any case, this was how Duan He had been living for so many years. Basically, most of the resources earned from risking their lives were given to the creation masters when nurturing Feys. Cut off the river. What time is it now? You're still going on the star web? You don't need to go to the star web to train your creation master abilities. If you have nothing to do, just go to the breeding room. Our whole family will be free of worries. Cut off the river. Hurry up and increase your creation master strength. Once you become a Class 2 creation master, I will use my connections to find a Class 4 creation master for you to be your master. Recluse Study had been a little hesitant when he had sent a private message to Duan He. Now that he had sent a private message to Recluse Study, he realized that his prediction was right. As expected, he had been lectured by his uncle again. His uncle was big and burly like a boar. However, if he really lectured him, even his father, who was teaching at an advanced spirit chi vocational college, could not compare. However, when it came to his strength as a creation master, Recluse Study had a lot to say. Recluse Study. Uncle, my creation master's strength has been greatly improved. Duan He was originally going to continue lecturing, but he suddenly saw the good news from his nephew. Duan He felt that even if he had a tiring day, he was not that tired now. Immediately after, Recluse Study's reply made Duan He's vision turn black. Recluse Study. Uncle, with the flower brocade pearls you gave me previously, and the new pot I bought with my lucky money, I am now stronger than some Class 2 creation masters. Recluse Study. Of course, I am talking about the success rate of concocting the spirit fluid. Duan He was currently contacting a few sellers for the prices of the rare spiritual ingredients he needed, while waiting for his nephew's good news. However, when he saw his nephew's message, Duan He felt as though he had shut himself up. His nephew was really a little genius. Was there such a comparison? The spirit fluid concocted by a Class 1 creation master did not require many spiritual ingredients. 2 pots of flower brocade pearls were given to a Class 1 creation master. As long as one's basic skills were solid enough, the success rate of concocting the spirit fluid would be at least 30%. If one really wanted to compare the success rate would be comparable to some low-level Class 3 creation masters. But as a Class 1 creation master, why don't you compete with Class 2 creation masters in healing phase damaged roots? After a long time, Duan He finally recovered from his recluse. Duan He, who had recovered from his recluse, angrily replied, "Broken River. You are now 19 years old. If you do not become a Class 2 creation master by the age of 20, I will not be able to find a good master for you." Recluse Study felt a little wronged. His uncle was good at everything but worried for nothing. Was it difficult to find a master? He had nothing to do in the group chat, and had picked up a few jokes about Master Duan Li. He had been acting cute all day. Wasn't he accepted as an in-name disciple by Master Duan Li? Recluse Study had been lectured by his uncle all day long. Now he finally found a chance to retaliate. Recluse Study. "Uncle, I have been accepted as an in-name disciple by Class 4 creation master Duan Li." Recluse Study. "Master Duan Li said that as long as I can become a Class 2 creation master before the age of 20 and pass her test, she will accept me as a personal disciple." Second update. Please get monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 549. When Duan He saw Recluse Study's message, he was immediately stunned. What's going on? Did this kid find himself a master? Duan He's first reaction was that his cheap nephew had been deceived. But immediately after, Duan He realized how treacherous his nephew was. Rather than worrying about his nephew being deceived, he might as well worry about others being deceived by his nephew. When had his nephew ever suffered a loss? At the thought of this, Duan He could not help but wonder if this Class 4 creation master had been deceived by his nephew. Apart from a small number of Class 3 creation masters, the rest of the creation masters who had real titles and were called by their titles were all Class 4 creation masters. As long as a Class 4 creation master was willing to accept his nephew as a disciple, it would definitely be a profit. Even if it was just a right-in disciple. A right-in disciple could already receive guidance from a Class 4 creation master. As long as they could receive guidance from a Class 4 creation master and learn knowledge, they would be able to increase their own abilities. Therefore, Duan He did not really care if his nephew was a right-in disciple or a personal disciple. However, Duan He did not know where his nephew had gotten to know a Class 4 creation master. His nephew would climb the Star Tower for 5 hours every day without any hesitation. He was already at the 60th floor now. He could not have met a Class 4 creation master during a Star Tower duel, right? Just thinking about it made Duan He feel that it was nonsense. Even if a Class 4 creation master was not adept at combat, he would not be too weak if he used his phase body to collide. Cut off the river. Where did you find a master? Recluse Study was regretting sending a private message to his uncle. All the group members that could be online were already online, and the group welfare auction was going to start in 3 minutes. But his uncle was still asking questions. If he kept replying to his uncle's messages, how could he watch the show? Recluse Study was preparing to end the battle quickly. Recluse Study, group chat. Recluse Study's reply stunned Duan He. What group chat allowed me to find a Class 4 creation master as a master? Isn't this the same as a blind man fishing in the sea and finding the Rouge Queen clam? Cut off the river. What group chat? You even found a Class 4 creation master as a master? River break. Don't try to fool me. Otherwise, I'll tell your mother that you hired someone to do your homework for this holiday. Let's see if your mother will hit you or not. Recluse Study, who saw the news about his uncle, felt like going crazy. What the heck was that? Why did this uncle of hers suddenly want to gouge people's eyeballs out of the blue? If his mother found out that he had found someone to help him with his homework, he would be beaten into a pulp. Recluse Study wanted to argue, but he realized that the group welfare auction would begin in a minute. Cultivating in seclusion was like breaking a jar. Reclusive Study. It's the fan club of the Star Web store where you bought the flower brocade pearls for me. Recluse Study. Uncle, it was fine before. In the future, I will train my creation master aptitude in the breeding room. And you have to promise me that you won't tell my mother about this. You cannot go back on your words. Recluse Study. I can't go now. There's an auction for heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls in the group. I'm going to watch the show. After reading this message, Duan-He felt even more confused. What's going on? After thinking about his nephew's words, Duan-He vaguely remembered the Star Web store where he had traded for the flower brocade pearls through the blind trade. Duan-He had coincidentally come across the transaction of a batch of flower brocade pearls. He had only spent 10 mid-grade strange flames to exchange for 1 flower brocade pearls. Experts like Duan-He did not really care about the flower brocade pearls anymore. However, when Duan-He had used 10 mid-grade strange flames to exchange for the flower brocade pearls, he still felt that the Star Web store's owner had a brain. Such an item, which would be instantly sold in the Rare Lifeform Pavilion's auction, had actually been sold in his own Star Web store. But now, after communicating with his nephew, Duan-He felt that his worldview as an Emperor-class expert had been refreshed once again. Since when would a Star Web store sell heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls that even Emperor-class experts would have to put in some effort to find? Duan-He did not usually buy many things on Star Web, so he checked the transaction records. Duan-He immediately found the purchase with no loss Star Web store, where he had traded for the flower brocade pearls through the blind trade. Duan-He had previously blocked all messages apart from private chats. Therefore, after trading for the flower brocade pearls, Duan-He did not receive an invitation to join the group chat. However, even if Duan-He had received the invitation, he probably would not have joined and would have ignored the notification that he had been dropped into the group chat. Now, Duan-He had chosen to join the purchase with no loss store's group chat without hesitation. Duan-He didn't want to verify the authenticity of his nephew's words in the closed-door study. Based on Duan-He's understanding of his nephew, even if his nephew used the flower brocade pearls to cook and angered him to death, he would not lie. The reason Duan-He had joined the purchase with no loss store's fan club was that his main phase evolution required a few heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Since his nephew was auctioning them in this group chat, Duan-He could save the trouble of trading with the creation master, who nurtured the elemental shellfish. Duan-He was confident that no one in this group would be able to snatch the pearls from him, given his wealth, as an Emperor-class expert. Even if he was really poor and lacked resources, he would not be able to snatch the pearls. Lin Yuan was originally prepared to start the group welfare auction at 10 a.m. sharp, but he did not expect a newcomer to join at that time. He knew that his purchase with no loss store did not have any resources and was still on sale. Therefore, this person was likely to have purchased something from the store, but did not choose to join the group chat. The group welfare auction was about to start. Since a newcomer had joined the group, it was necessary to welcome him. However, Recluse Study, who had always been at the forefront, was now silent. He felt as though he had shot himself in the foot. Now that his uncle had joined the group, how was he going to lead the group in the future? After Duan-He entered the group chat, he did not expect the members to be so enthusiastic in this small fan club. A few dozen of them were almost catching up to the thousands of people in other groups. But immediately after, Duan-He saw the new 9 purity heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls that Lin Yuan had put up for the group welfare auction. Apart from being shocked, Duan-He's breathing immediately became hurried. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 550. Duan-He simply wanted to curse. Why didn't he join this group earlier? Duan he carefully checked the group welfare again. There were 4 elemental pearls: water, wind, fire, and earth. After confirming that these elemental pearls were 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, Duan he immediately checked the purchase with no loss store's detailed information. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Duan he wouldn't have believed that a 1-star store would actually auction 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. When Duan he was still a pinnacle king class expert, he had spent a lot of effort and owed a lot of favors in order to promote his phase to the suzerain grade. He had also spent a lot of resources to invite an advanced class 4 creation master to help him nurture a few 9, 7 and 9, 8 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. Although heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls were in circulation in the market, most of them were 9, 5 and 9, 6 purity. It wasn't impossible to encounter 9, 7 and 9, 8 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, but if it was urgent, he could only find an advanced class 4 creation master to customize them. As for 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, even a pinnacle class 4 creation master would need to gamble a lot of luck to nurture one. Logically speaking, no one would sell these heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls in the market, not to mention auctioning them off as a group benefit for the few people in the group. Duan he's current strength was already at the Emperor class, so he wouldn't need to spend as much effort to find an advanced class 4 creation master to nurture 9, 7 and 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls for him. However, if he wanted to find a pinnacle class 4 creation master to nurture 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls with pearls, even if Duan he was an Emperor class expert, he wouldn't have any face if he wanted to interact with a pinnacle class 4 creation master. Duan he's strength was only considered average among Emperor class experts, so he didn't really think much of his strength as a pinnacle class 4 creation master. Only those pinnacle Emperor class experts were qualified to be on equal footing with advanced class 4 creation masters. The heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls that Duan he needed for his phase evolution weren't as high as the requirement for the suzerain grade. The pure elemental energy contained in the elemental pearls was mainly used to stimulate the transformation of the pure type phase bloodline. Therefore, high purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls were only useful for phase with pure attribute bloodlines that were about to metamorphose. Duan he's 2 main phase were about to break through to Myth 2 and take human form. During this process, Duan he needed spiritual ingredients that were helpful for the phase evolution and enhancement. The pure elemental energy only played a supporting role, but now, Duan he felt as if he had fallen into a pit, and there was a pile of diamonds waiting for him to find them. Even though Duan he had consumed a lot of resources to evolve his Fae from Myth I to Myth 2, he didn't have enough resources. However, as an Emperor Realm expert, Duan he still had some savings. During this time, Duan he had also obtained many source-type items from the Waterworld Dimensional Rift in Indigo Azure City. At this time, Duan he made up his mind to bid for the 12 female elemental pearls with a purity of 9. Since Duan he had made up his mind to auction the group welfare, he decided to ask about the rules of the auction. After all, Duan he had just joined the group and wasn't very clear about the rules of the group welfare auction. Duan he felt that he was at a disadvantage. If these 10 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls with a purity of 9, he would need to prepare some specific resources as bargaining chips to conduct the transaction. Duan he was really going to curse. Duan he remembered that when this group's owner had used the blind trade to exchange for the flower brocade pearls, he had stipulated the bargaining chips for the blind trade. Furthermore, the bargaining chip was a rare mid-grade strange flame. Duan he was about to ask, but before he sent the message, he habitually glanced at the group chat before sending the message. Duan he was petrified by this one glance. At that moment, Duan he saw someone at his nephew, Recluse Study, and the question made Duan he have the urge to drag Recluse Study in front of him and beat him up. Someone in the group chat asked, "Stream in the cloud." Fortunately, I made it in time. If I couldn't, my guarantee would have been in vain. Stream in the cloud. Wow, Recluse study. I scrolled through the group chat. The bright moon hanging over the melon you mentioned is related to the Zheng family. Why didn't I hear anything from the Zheng family? When Duan he saw this message, he felt that his nephew was simply a maniac who conned his uncle. Duan he had repeatedly emphasized not to go out at home, but this nephew had not only overheard it, but he had also taken it as a melon and posted it in the group chat. If such news were to spread to the ears of the person in question, he would not be able to bear the responsibility, even as an emperor-class expert. When Duan he had first left the deserted island, he hadn't known Lin Yuan's identity. When he had come to the deserted island for the second time, he had looked in the direction of the dimensional rift, and could only see the moonlight that hadn't dispersed. Duan he simply couldn't see through the moonlight barrier. Duan he felt that the few figures standing in the rich moonlight were getting more and more familiar. Duan he only dared to raise his head after the Moon Empress had walked out of the moonlight barrier and carried a body that was enveloped by the moonlight. However, when Duan he looked up, he saw the two suzerain/myth breed phase that had killed Jiao Hansong. When he looked up, he saw the two suzerain/myth breed phase that had killed Jiao Hansong. Duan he suddenly came to a realization. It turned out that the strange masked youth that had ordered people to kill Jiao Hansong on the deserted island was the Moon Empress disciple. Duan he had also guessed Lin Yuan's identity when he had heard Lin Yuan mention the Sky City. Duan he was certain that he had never heard of the Sky City's faction. Now that he thought about it, the Sky City wasn't some rumored hidden faction. It should be a faction that the masked youth had just created. Duan he knew this secret because he had been on the deserted island as a bystander and had witnessed everything that had happened. However, this matter had been released as a melon by his nephew. As long as the person involved knew about the Song of Wind and was not a fool, he would probably be able to easily lock onto the scope of the information leak. It would probably be very easy to lock onto the scope of the leak, and after some investigation, they would be able to determine who had leaked the secret. Baidu read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 551. Before Recluse study, he had been waiting for others to pick up on his gossip, so that he could tell them everything he had secretly heard. But now that his uncle had entered the group, not only did Recluse study not dare to eat happily, but he also felt that he had shut himself off. Fortunately, Yinshi did not dwell on this issue, and had already started to Lin Yuan. Stream in the cloud. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, since the group welfare is so good this time, why don't we not auction in the group chat? Stream in the cloud. We can go to the Purchase with No Loss store and hold an auction for the Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. Lin Yuan was about to stop the group messages that kept flooding the screen and hold the auction for the Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. However, after seeing Stream in the Cloud's words, Lin Yuan only felt a few black lines appear on his head. In the group welfare auction, the 12 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls would be auctioned as a package. Therefore, it could only be considered as an auction for one item. The Purchase with No Loss store would not have enough trouble auctioning off a single item. Moreover, as a one-star store, Lin Yuan had long since had enough store points, but he had never upgraded it. If everyone went to the Purchase with No Loss store, wouldn't it become a student class meeting with such a large area and so many people? Lin Yuan was preparing to auction in the group chat. He found that almost all the members in the group agreed with Stream in the Cloud, who was also the braised egg head. Among them, the first to enter the Purchase with No Loss store were the mother-daughter duo, the violent-tempered woman, and Zhou Jiesin. I hope I can treat this group welfare auction as a meet-up event for the Purchase with No Loss store's fan club members. Lin Yuan did not care, as he had nothing urgent to do in a while, since the group members had been chatting in the group for so long, and were so eager to use this opportunity to get to know each other. Lin Yuan was naturally willing to fulfill and create this opportunity. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. Then come to the Purchase with No Loss store. I'll open the store's access control for you. After sending the message, Lin Yuan was in a hurry to buy 100 ordinary wooden chairs from a Star Web furniture store not far from his Purchase with No Loss store. These ordinary chairs cost 200 Federation dollars each and could only be used on Star Web. They were considered the most ordinary furniture on Star Web. When Lin Yuan had just opened the purchase with no loss store, he had come to this furniture store to look at the furniture. However, at that time, Lin Yuan wished that he could spend a single cent, as if it were $100. He simply couldn't bear to buy such useless furniture. The reason why Lin Yuan had bought so many useless solid wood chairs at once was that he had to use them. Since there was nothing in the purchase with no loss store, the group members had come to the store to participate in the group welfare auction. They could not possibly let all of them stand, right? When Lin Yuan arrived at the Star Web store after buying the chair, there were already 20 to 30 group members waiting inside. Lin Yuan quickly started to set up the solid wood chair that he had just bought. Upon seeing this, Listen walked to Lin Yuan's side. Since Lin Yuan was wearing a mask engraved with Sky Majestic City's strange patterns, Listen could not see his face clearly. However, just by looking at Lin Yuan's spirited eyes, Listen knew that he was in good spirits. While Listen helped Lin Yuan set up the chair, Zhou Jessen and the violent-tempered woman also walked over. He helped Lin Yuan and Listen arrange the chairs neatly in the purchase with no loss store. The others looked at Lin Yuan, who was wearing a strange mask, and could not help but feel that he was a weirdo. In particular, the new group members simply could not understand how a person could casually take out 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. He actually used the tables that were given for free when the Star Web opened the store, as well as the solid wood chairs that could be bought on the Star Web for only 200 Federation dollars. Could this be the rumored explanation for the true rich people usually not showing off? However, no matter how one looked at it, the purchase with no loss store's shabby layout did not seem to be not showing off. Instead, it was more like deliberately pretending to be poor. Recluse Study did not directly enter the purchase with no loss store. Instead, he obediently lowered his head at the entrance of the Star Web store, waiting for Duan He, who had yet to arrive. At this moment, Reclusive Study heard a familiar angry bellow beside his ear. Li Tiao, you eavesdropped on me and even spread my words. Are you waiting for me to inform your mother to beat you up? Recluse Study pursed her lips. Uncle, I must officially inform you that although you are my uncle, there is no difference between you and my father. If you die, I will have to send you off. But I have a father. My father's name is Li Pengao. At first, Duan He was still a little shocked and angry. However, after hearing his nephew Li Tiao's improper words, Duan He felt so angry that he almost fainted. Even though Duan He was an emperor-level expert, every time he came into contact with Li Tiao, Duan He felt like he was losing control of his anger. Duan He said viciously, "Let's go in and participate in the auction first. I must win these 12 heavenly maiden-ranked elemental pearls. I'll make sure my sister doesn't deal with you when we get home." Duan He was always angry with Li Tiao. However, no matter how angry he was, Duan He could not bear to slap Li Tiao. However, Duan He had a way to deal with Li Tiao. As long as he went home and told his sister about Li Tiao's problem, he would definitely be beaten up within half an hour. He might even send Li to a mixed doubles. Li Tiao curled his lips. He knew that he wouldn't have a good time when he returned home. In any case, Li Tiao was used to such situations. Li Tiao quickly said, "Uncle, I'll bid for you when you auction the group welfare later. Anyway, there's no difference between me bidding for it and you bidding for it." As Li Tiao and Duan He spoke, they had already entered the purchase with no loss store. However, Li Tiao realized that after he spoke, his uncle did not respond for a long time. However, Li Tiao realized that after he spoke, his uncle did not respond for a long time. Li Tiao could not help but scratch his head. That shouldn't be the case. Even if his uncle was angry, he shouldn't have rejected such a request. Li Tiao reached out and pulled Duan He's sleeve. He realized that his uncle still did not respond. Li Tiao raised his head in confusion, only to discover that his uncle was staring straight ahead. Li Tiao followed Duan He's gaze and realized that Duan He was looking at a young man wearing a strange mask with an indescribable expression. Baiduan read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 552. Li Xiaoyao had not been in the group for long, and had not seen Lin Yuan before. This was also the first time he had seen Lin Yuan. However, due to the fact that Lin Yuan had been surrounded by many members in the Purchase with No Loss store, the image of Lin Yuan wearing a strange mask had also spread among the fans. Li Xiaoyao looked suspiciously at Duan He, who was staring at the group moderator, and suddenly had a strange thought. His uncle was so powerful, and was only middle-aged. Logically speaking, his son should be able to do nothing at this age. However, his uncle Duan He had never found an aunt for him. Could it be? Li Xiaoyao's brain worked quickly, and the alarm in his heart rang loudly. It seemed like he had to tell his mother about his conjecture and discovery after being beaten up for half an hour by her to vent his anger. Otherwise, if he suddenly had a little uncle, even if he could accept it, his mother would not be able to accept it. Duan He did not know what his nephew, Li Xiaoyao, was thinking. But even if he knew, Duan He would not be in the mood to kick Li Xiaoyao. Duan He realized that the young man wearing a strange mask was wearing clothes that were completely different from what he had worn outside Indigo Azure City. However, the special aura on his body was still fresh in Duan He's memory. Moreover, Duan He had paid special attention to the strange mask on Lin Yuan's face. This mask was very special, and it had the majestic Sky City's pattern on it. Duan He was sure that he would not remember this mask wrongly. If it was just a mask, Duan He would not be able to confirm Lin Yuan's identity. However, Listen, who was next to Lin Yuan, was not wearing a mask, and Duan He had clearly seen Listen's face. After seeing Listen, Duan He immediately confirmed that the masked young man in front of him was the one he had met outside Indigo Azure City. At the same time, Duan He confirmed that the Purchase with No Loss store's owner was the Moon Empress disciple. Duan He felt his scalp go numb when he suddenly knew the identity of the Purchase with No Loss store's owner. Duan He looked around at the others who were already seated in the store, and thought to himself, apart from the young man named Listen, who followed the Moon Empress disciple, only he knew the true identity of the Purchase with No Loss store's owner. He was afraid that others would find out that the Purchase with No Loss store's owner was the Moon Empress disciple. They would not dare to sit so casually on the stool that the Moon Empress disciple had just arranged. After confirming the identity of the Purchase with No Loss store's owner, Duan He finally knew why there were 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls in the group welfare. Only the Moon Empress disciple could easily produce such treasures that even pinnacle class 4 creation masters had to rely on luck to nurture. Then Duan He realized that if the Moon Empress disciple was the Purchase with No Loss store's owner, his nephew would be the owner's owner. Wasn't this the same as feeding the melon directly to the person involved, causing him to be exposed in an instant? Lin Yuan would be the owner being pulled, and the owner would be pulled. Loss. He immediately. Xiaoyao eat. Looking at his uncle's ferocious eyes, Li Xiaoyao was so scared that he shrunk his neck, and didn't mention that he wanted to bid for Duan He in the auction. Li Xiaoyao looked at his uncle's fierce eyes and shrank back in fear. He did not mention anything about helping Duan He bid during the auction. He looked around and saw that there was still an empty seat next to his master, Master Duan Li. So he quickly ran over. When Duan He looked up at the masked young man again, he suddenly realized that the masked young man was also looking in his direction. Duan He's heart trembled as he looked at Lin Yuan's eyes through his mask. He realized that he was actually looking straight into those eyes. Immediately after, Duan He noticed the corner of the young man's mouth curling up under the strange mask that covered half of his face. A faint smile appeared on his face. Duan He hurriedly gave Lin Yuan an awkward smile, and picked a seat in the back row to sit down. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He had been planning to get in touch with Duan He through seclusion. However, he did not expect Duan He to be a member of his Purchase with No Loss store's fan club. It would be much easier for him to get in touch with Duan He in the future. Lin Yuan looked at the awkward smile on Duan He's face, and was even more sure that Duan He knew his identity. However, It was not a good time for Lin Yuan to get in touch with Duan He. He had to wait until the end of the group welfare auction. Seeing that almost everyone was seated, Lin Yuan said in a clear voice, "The group welfare auction is going to be held in the group. I originally planned to hold the group welfare auction in the group, just like the flower brocade pearls auction. Since everyone requested to come to the Star Web store for the group welfare auction, I might as well take this opportunity to let you have a look at this batch of elemental pearls before the auction." As Lin Yuan spoke, Listen walked to Lin Yuan's side with a tray. Lin Yuan waved his hand and the nine purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls of water, air, fire, and earth appeared on the tray. There were 12 pearls of each element, for a total of 48 pearls. When these nine purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls appeared, each pearl was dyed with pure elemental energy and bloomed with unique colors. This caused the tray in Listen's hand to be shrouded in a layer of rich colors. At that moment, a coquettish voice echoed impatiently, "I want to know if I can choose the pearl essence on the 12 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, besides choosing their attributes." As the coquettish woman spoke, she looked at the 48 elemental pearls on Listen's tray and took 2 breaths of cold air. It was originally just a woman's subconscious voice, but when this voice reached the ears of the surrounding men, they felt that their bodies were somewhat out of control. It was simply too coquettish. Not only did the men feel that their bodies were out of control, but even the braised egghead, Zhou Jiesin, and the violent-tempered woman felt that their bodies were out of control. They really wanted to use their iron fists of justice to beat this coquettish voice back into this woman's stomach. When Lin Yuan heard this voice, he did not have any other thoughts. He just suddenly remembered that Genius was now 2.5 years old. As housekeeping beasts, 100 questions beasts had to be sterilized after the age of 3. If they were not sterilized, they would continuously meow day and night every spring. The first time was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 553. Most Fays would have a sudden change after reaching puberty, but most of them could control their emotions and behavior. They would not scream, or be unable to control their behavior. The main reason why the 100 questions beast had such a problem was that as a housekeeping beast, it was not even considered a Fae. It could only be considered a domesticated wild beast. As a wild beast, the 100 questions beast might have high intelligence, but it still lacked the instinct to control itself. Genius was now 1,000 questions beast, and its strength had also reached bronze/legend. Genius should be able to control its beast instincts after becoming 1,000 questions beast. No matter what, Lin Yuan did not want Genius to become a lonely warrior. No matter how miserable it was, it had to be a Santa Claus. After hearing the woman's question, Lin Yuan calmly replied, "There are 12 of each attribute among these 48 elemental pearls. Among these 48 elemental pearls, there are 12 pearls of each attribute. The pearls are different for every 9 purity heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl. Everyone's favorite type of pearls is different. The person who wins the auction can only choose 12 out of these 48 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls." Lin Yuan's words carried a kind of heroism. Freely choosing 12 out of the 48 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls was equivalent to giving the person who won the group welfare the right to choose. The right to choose could be based on the person's preference, maximizing the value of the group welfare. This caused the person who was originally preparing to auction these 12 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls to grit his teeth and increase the chips in his hand. Lin Yuan raised his brows when he saw everyone's enthusiastic reaction. After Lin Yuan had evolved the 4 elemental shellfish to bronze/legend, it was very difficult for him to make it produce heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls with a purity below 9. He could only occasionally produce a few heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls with a purity of around 9.8. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not feel that the pearls on these elemental pearls were rare or special. The pearls on the elemental pearls might be beautiful, but in Lin Yuan's eyes, they were more comfortable than hoarding some source-type items and all kinds of rare spiritual ingredients. Lin Yuan already felt that he was becoming more and more like a hoarding rat. Anyway, hoarding is the right thing to do. The woman with the coquettish voice sat at the front, and Listen held the plate in his hand, and was about to show it to every group member who was participating in the auction. Hence, the woman with the coquettish voice was the first to examine the 48 heavenly maiden-level elemental pearls on the plate. The coquettish woman seemed to have seen the treasure of her dreams, and she could not help but cry out in surprise. "Oh my God! All of these heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls have the best pearls, the dreamy cloud swampland." As she spoke, the woman with the coquettish voice hurriedly grabbed a handful of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls and carefully checked them. Finally, he sighed to himself. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, and if I hadn't investigated it as an expert, I would have been able to confirm that these dreamy cloud lake beads are real. When I saw so many heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls of the dreamy cloud lake, I thought they were mass-produced fakes. The woman's words immediately made all the bigwigs, including Duan He, who were waiting to check the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, in the listening disc seethe with excitement. It's actually the cloudy dreamy lake's pearl. I'm determined to win this group welfare auction. Sigh. If it's the dreamy cloud lake beads, then I can't bear to use the 12 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls in this group welfare auction. I can only treat them as collectibles. It's said that the dreamy cloud lake beads will have different patterns and luster depending on the wearer. I wonder if it's true. Anyway, I'm just here to watch the show. I can't afford to bid for it this time. No, I can't afford to bid for it in the first place. Previously, Lin Yuan only knew that the surface of the elemental pearls would form a bead when they reached a purity of 9. However, Lin Yuan knew relatively little about the pearl essence, which only had an appearance and no special effects. Although Lin Yuan did not know much about the types of 9 purity heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. However, this plate of heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, that everyone called the dreamy cloud lake beads, were produced by the 4 different types of elemental shellfish in his spirit lock spatial zone. It could be said that 95% of the 9 purity heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls produced in the spirit lock spatial zone were of the dreamy cloud lake type. As for the remaining 5%, even a straight man like Lin Yuan felt that it was too beautiful and didn't take it out. However, just from the reactions of the group members, the fact that the pearl was a heavenly maiden-level elemental pearl from the dreamy cloud lake was already very extraordinary. He understood that he had underestimated the bronze/legend elemental shellfish in the spirit lock spatial zone. Or rather, he had underestimated the massive and pure spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone. However, this was excellent news for Lin Yuan, since the pearls on the surface of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls could affect their value. That was tantamount to raising the resources that he could produce limitlessly. This allowed the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls to have more purchasing power. Listen had already carefully checked a plate of elemental pearls for everyone participating in the auction. After checking it out, everyone's breathing became rapid. His eyes were fixed on the plate in Listen's hand that contained the heaven maiden-grade elemental pearls. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan coughed lightly and said, "That's right. Since everyone has checked these elemental pearls, you can ask me directly if you have any questions. If there are no questions, then the auction for the group welfare will begin." Logically speaking, everyone should have a lot of questions when it came to auctioning expensive things, like the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. However, Lin Yuan's method made these bigwigs sitting below have nothing to ask about auctioning expensive things like the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Everyone had already carefully checked the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls that were going to be auctioned next. They already had an idea of the quality of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls. Even though these 9 purity heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls were all from the dreamy cloud lake, they were all grown in the bodies of organisms like the elemental shellfish. Therefore, each pearl had a certain difference. However, after looking at the 48 elemental pearls, those who were determined to bid for them had probably already decided which 12 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls they would choose. Now, all the bigwigs who were preparing to participate in the auction had already prepared their resources and were ready to go. Second, more, seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.